All right, everybody, welcome to Azimuth Podcast. This is our first presidential debate for 2024, and we really wanted to bring something special to you as it pertains to camera deciding not to play well with others.
And I thought Biden was going to be the first one to fall tonight.
I know, no kidding, right? So you can notice we are not in our studio right now. We are in our living room. And again, this is Azimuth Podcast. I'm Barrett McNabb, and with me is my wife, Kimberly McNabb. And we're super excited to have you. This is going to be a really exciting time, I think. I think we're at the level where both presidential presumptive nominees, they're not the candidates yet, but we can go ahead and say that they're the presumptive nominees, are ready to duke it out. And I think that this is going to be something pretty special.
Yep. So what are some expectations that you have for tonight, Barrett?
Okay. I have the expectation that the camera is going to work. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties right now. So we're going to try and fix that. We did a rehearsal, but obviously we didn't rehearse everything, namely one of the cameras, the gyroscope not working. So Kimberly, really kind of one of the things that I fully expect out of tonight is to really kind of have, President Trump and President Biden really kind of just feel each other out. I don't think there's going to be a lot of sparks that are going to be flying. I know we've seen some reports where people have said that they are trying to get Joe Biden to come out of the gate, really rip-roaring, ready to go. I don't know if he has the energy.
Like at the State of the Union, and that would further confirm suspicions that he would be hyped up on something. I think people need to have reasonable expectation management, and I think that's true for most things. For a long time there, conservative commentators were saying, just don't let them die, blah, blah. And then people started saying, don't put your expectations too low because anything other than dying will be seen as a win. And everybody will claim Biden as the winner. But you also don't want to expect it too high. So, and I treat, our own children the same way. Like before we go to someplace new or someplace I know they might act up, it definitely gives me better fighting chances when I, stop the car in the parking lot right as we're about to go in and I say, okay, look, you're not going to look at anything, you're not going to touch anything, you're not going to ask for anything, blah, 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 tell them the things that I expect out of them. And while it's not a perfect trip to such and such place, it is far better than when I don't say anything. I think people just need reasonable expectation management. But Megyn Kelly put it really well earlier today. Like, if Trump's not an asshole and if Biden doesn't die, they'll both do pretty well.
Well, that makes sense. Yeah, that really does make a lot of sense. One of the things that, as we continue to look at this, both camps have obviously been doing media tours to try and make sure that they pump their candidate up to be something special, and rightly so, right? So you have the surrogates going on, all the things, all the talk shows. One of the things that I thought was very interesting was a Trump surrogate going on CNN and effectively being kicked off the show for talking about the moderators. And Dave Ash and Tapper, they're historically have been anti-Trump.
They've been saying Trump is Hitler for like 8 years.
Which,
I mean, come on, eventually you need some creativity on your insults, and plus, you use the same thing, the same label over and over again. It loses its meaning. It kind of gets washed out. And also for a party that aligns with Hamas, the IDF forces have found copies of Mein Kampf. For those of you who didn't know any history in high school, that's the book that Hitler wrote before he went to jail. And we're not talking like copies that like an aunt gave him and they just put in a corner somewhere. These copies of Mein Kampf in Palestine and in Gaza they were studied,
Right.
like worn out, highlighted in kids' bedrooms. So this is the party, people that affiliate with the Democratic Party, they're not neutral, non-biased journalists. We all know this. And so they're aligning with people who studied Hitler's book. Like, wait a minute, is that a good thing or a bad thing to call Trump Hitler?
Right.
I'm so confused now.
Yeah, this is truly something amazing because we have low energy, sleepy Joe Biden, and are they going to result in name calling? I mean, Trump always likes to give his pet names, to his people or to his opponents, and so here we go. We're going to see this type of thing. I can promise you, Joe Biden is probably going to refer to Trump as a convicted felon.
Oh, absolutely.
Right,
Absolutely. There's
because
no chance that he doesn't.
that's low hanging fruit. That's on the tree there. And I can't take credit for this. Trey Gowdy, former congressman, said this earlier on Fox News. But what Trump should do is immediately say, yes, I am, but so is your son. Is a convicted felon, and you are an unconvicted felon, meaning that you have committed crimes with the classified documents, but the Justice Department found you too incompetent to stand trial, right?
Yeah,
so you can't participate in your own defense because you're incompetent, and you're just going to a well-meaning old fool who has a poor memory. So he's just going to say you're an unconvicted felon, and just because people felt sorry for you.
Yes, and I was competent enough to stand trial, exactly. I'd like to circle back to the CNN host that kicked the Trump campaign spokesperson, Caroline Leavitt.
Right.
The host, Cassie Hunt, kicked her off. And so I try to look for the full bit because, when you only hear like a 1-minute clip, I'm like, okay, well, was she on there longer? And she was on there longer, but even the CNN video online, it is so clipped and mashed together. I'm like, what is missing in between? Caroline Leavitt had previously mentioned the bias of Jake Tapper and calling Trump Hitler, and then she's like, okay, don't attack my colleagues, and then
Right.
Now I want to ask you about Joe Biden, and then she said, no, first of all, and then she was trying to refer back to Jake Tapper, referring to Trump as Hitler. And then that's when someone was screaming in Cassie Hunt's ear, like, get her out of there, get her out of there. And she threw a massive hissy fit. I think if she had been truly professional, she
Right.
could have reined her back in and stuck her back on course and furthered the conversation. And so I expect similar tactics, like the second they hear something they don't want to, instead of directing it where they want it to go, they just shut off Trump's mic.
Right.
And that kind of tactic, it depends on how they do it, could be a win for Trump because really you want Biden to do the most talking. I think it's a 90-minute debate. Hell, if it's 87 minutes of Biden, there's no way he can talk that long. So, I mean, he would just make himself look bad. So I think that would be great. Now, on the flip side, if they cut Trump's mic off all the time so that the moderators themselves can really show their bias in full fashion in front of the entire world and go, you're Hitler, da 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 da, you're racist, da da da, all the tropes. People might go back to their 2016 or 2020, hating Trump, like those insults might pull them back instead of focusing on the issues that are here and now in 2024. All a result of Joe Biden's pathetic policies.
I couldn't agree more. Now let's get into some of the fun part for tonight. So we're going to be talking policy, but we're also going to be watching this with you. And we kind of want to turn this into a fun drinking game. So if you go to the community tab on our YouTube, or if you go to X, formerly known as Twitter, and go to Azimuth Podcast, we have a bingo card that is set up for you to play, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I think it's going to be amazing, and we're going to go ahead and switch over to the debate. But we're going to be talking about some of the things that we're drinking for our game. But we're going to go across and go live.
Entire thing together, all of us here on the panel and Sean Hannity in Atlanta, and you can stay with us from the beginning to the end on Fox News Channel. Then afterwards, we'll have the post-debate analysis, and Sean will take over at 11 o'clock Eastern. You know, it's going to be fascinating to watch this, and you know, you can just sort of hear their hearts palpitating probably from both sides of the stage at this point.
Both men will walk out onto the stage. They will face each other for the first time in 4 years. They've talked past each other. Their commercials have run. The campaigns have hurled in. And the White House is on the line.
Here, and we'll watch this open right now.
Make his case to the Americans just over 4 months until Election Day. Good evening, I'm Bash, anchor of CNN's Inside Politics and co-anchor of State of the Union.
I'm Jake Tapper, anchor of CNN's The Lead and co-anchor of State of the Union. Dana and I will co-moderate this evening. Our job is to facilitate a debate between the two candidates tonight. Before we introduce them, we want to share the rules of the debate with the audience at home. Former President Trump will be on the left side of the screen. President Biden will be appearing on the right. A coin toss determines their positions. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer a question and 1 minute each for responses and rebuttals. An additional minute for follow-up, clarification, or response is at the moderator's discretion.
When it's time for a candidate to speak, his microphone will be turned on and his opponent's microphone will be turned off. Should a candidate interrupt when his microphone is muted, he will be difficult to understand for viewers at home. At the end of the debate,
But probably not
candidate will
impossible.
get 2 minutes for
Yeah.
closing statements.
I mean, they're not that far
There is
apart
no
from each
studio audience tonight. Pre-written notes, props, or contact with campaign staff are not permitted during the debate. By accepting our invitation to debate, both candidates and their campaigns agreed to accept these rules.
Now, please welcome the 46th President of the United States, Joe Biden.
How are you?
Am I supposed to go there?
Great to be here. Thank you.
And please welcome the 45th President of the United States, Donald Trump.
No handshake.
Gentlemen, thanks so much for being here. Let's begin the debate, and let's start with the issue that voters consistently say is their top concern, the economy. President Biden, inflation has slowed, but prices remain high. Since you took office, the price of essentials has increased. For example, a basket of groceries that cost $100 then now costs more than $120. And typical home prices have jumped more than 30%. What do you say to voters who feel they are worse off under your presidency than they were under President Trump?
We got to take a look at what I was left when I became president and what Mr. Trump left me. We had an economy that was in free fall. The pandemic was so badly handled. Many people were dying. All he said was, it's not that serious. Just inject a little bleach in your arm. You'll be all right. The economy collapsed. There were no jobs. Unemployment rate rose to 15%. It was terrible. And so what we had to do was try to put things back together again. And that's exactly what we began to do. We created 15,000 new jobs. We brought out the position where we have 800,000 new manufacturing jobs, but there's more to be done.
Does he sound sick to you?
Working class
He
people
sounds like
are
he's
still
got a
in
cold.
trouble. I come from Scranton, Pennsylvania. I come of a household where the kitchen table, the things weren't able to be met during the month. It was a problem. The price of eggs, the price of gas, the price of housing, the price of a whole range of things. That's why I'm working so hard to make sure I deal with those problems. And we're going to make sure that we reduce the price of housing. We're going to make sure we build 2 million new units. We're going to make sure we cap rents so corporate greed can't take over. The combination, what I was left with in corporate greed, is the reason why we're in this problem right now. In addition to that, we're in a situation where if you take a look at all that was done in his administration, he didn't do much at all. By the time he left, things were in chaos, literally chaos. And so we put things back together. We created, I said, those jobs. We make sure we had a situation where we brought down the price of prescription drugs, which is a major issue for many people, to $15 for a insulin shot as opposed to $400. No senior has to pay more than $200 for any drug, all the drugs they can include beginning next year. And the situation is and we're going to make that available to everybody, to all Americans. So we're working to bring down the price around the kitchen table and that's what we're going to get done.
Thank you. President Trump?
We have the greatest economy in the history of our country. We have never done so well. Everybody was amazed by it. Other countries were copying us. We got hit with COVID. And when we did, we spent the money necessary so we wouldn't end up in a Great Depression, the likes of which we had in 1929. By the time we finished, so we did a great job. We get a lot of credit for the economy, a lot of credit for the military, and no wars, and so many other things. Everything was rocking good. But the thing we never got the credit for, and we should have, is getting us out of that COVID mess. He created mandates that was a disaster for our country. But other than that, we had given them back a country where the stock market actually was higher than pre-COVID, and nobody thought that was even possible. The only jobs he created are for illegal immigrants and bounce back jobs, a bounce back from the COVID.
That's exactly right.
He's not done a good job. He's done a
most
poor
of those
job, and
are
inflation's
come back
killing
from
our
COVID.
country. It is absolutely killing us.
Thank you. President Biden?
And a
Well,
lot
the
of
greatest
part-time
economy in the
jobs.
world. He's the only one who thinks that, I think. I don't know anybody else who thinks he's the greatest economy in the world. And, you know, the fact of the matter is that we find ourselves in a situation where his economy, he rewarded the wealthy. He had the largest tax cut in American history, $2 trillion. He raised a deficit larger than any president has in any one term. He's the only president other than Herbert Hoover who's lost more jobs than he when he began, since Herbert Hoover. The idea that he did something that was significant. And the military, you know, when he was president, they were still killing people in Afghanistan. He didn't do anything about that. When he was president, we were still finding ourselves in a position where you had a notion that we were this safe country. The truth is, I'm the only president this century that doesn't have this decade, that doesn't have any troops dying anywhere in the world like he did.
President Trump, I want to follow up if I can.
Am I allowed to respond to him?
Well, I'm going to ask you a follow-up. You can do whatever you want with the minute that we give you. I want to follow up. You want to impose a 10% tariff on all goods coming into the U.S. How will you ensure that that doesn't drive prices even higher?
It's not going to drive them higher. It's just going to cost countries that have been ripping us off for years, like China and many others, in all fairness to China. It's going to just force them to pay us a lot of money, reduce our deficit tremendously, and give us a lot of power for other things. But he made a statement. The only thing he was right about is I gave you the largest tax cut in history. I also gave you the largest regulation cut in history. That's why we had all the jobs. And the jobs went down and then they bounced back. And he's taking credit for bounce back jobs. You can't do that. He also said he inherited 9% inflation. No, he inherited almost no inflation, and it stayed that way for 14 months. And then it blew up under his leadership because they spent money like a bunch of people that didn't know what they were doing, and they don't know what they were doing. It was the worst, probably the worst administration in history. There's never been. And as far as Afghanistan is concerned, I was getting out of Afghanistan, but we were getting out with dignity, with strength, with power. He got out. It was the most embarrassing day in the history of our country's life.
Yeah, it was
President
absolutely,
Trump, over the last
absolutely
8
crazy.
years, under both of your administrations, the national debt soared to record highs. And according to a new nonpartisan analysis, President Trump, your administration approved $8.4 trillion in new debt. Well, so far, President Biden, you've approved $4.3 trillion in new debt. So, former President Trump, many of the tax cuts that you signed into law are set to expire next year. You want to extend them and go even further, you say. With the U.S. facing trillion-dollar deficits and record debt, why should top earners and corporations pay even less in taxes than they do now?
Because the tax cuts spurred the greatest economy that we've ever seen just prior to COVID. And even after COVID, it was so strong that we were able to get through COVID much better than just about any other country. But we spurred, that tax spurred. Now, when we cut the taxes, as an example, the corporate tax was cut down to 21% from 39%, plus beyond that. We took in more revenue with much less tax, and companies were bringing back trillions of dollars back into our country.
That's the biggest thing. They were holding it overseas, and with the lower tax rate, they were able to bring it back into the United States.
We're ready to start using the liquid gold right under our feet, the oil and gas right under our feet. We were going to have something that nobody else has had. We got hit with COVID. We did a lot to fix it. I gave him an unbelievable situation with all of the therapeutics and all of the things that we came up with. We gave him something great. Remember, more people died under his administration, even though we had largely fixed it. More people died under his administration than our administration, and we were right in the middle of it, something which a lot of people don't like to talk about. but he had far more people dying in his administration. He
Yeah,
did the mandate, which
vaccine
is a
mandates.
disaster, mandating it. The vaccine went out. He did a mandate on the vaccine, which is the thing that people most
Who's the
objected to
dictator?
about the vaccine. And he did a very poor job, just a very poor job. And I will tell you, not only poor there, but throughout the entire world, we're no longer respected as a country. They
Well,
don't
plus
respect
Kamala
our leadership.
Harris
They don't respect the United States.
made fun of the
anymore.
vaccine
We're
and
like
said
a
if it was
third
designed
world
by
nation
Trump, she wasn't
between
going to take it.
Weaponization of
Right.
his election, trying to go after his political opponent. All of the things he's done, we've become like a third world nation. And it's a shame.
I hope
The
he
damage
maintains
he's
this
done to our
demeanor
country.
and
And I'd love to ask him, and will, why he allowed millions
wanna
of
talk
people to
over him.
come in here from prisons, jails, and mental institutions to come into our country and destroy our country.
President Trump, we will get to immigration later in this block. President Biden, I want to give you an opportunity to respond to this question about the national debt.
He had the largest national debt of any president in a 4-year period, number one. Number two, he got $2 trillion tax cut benefited the very wealthy. What I'm going to do is fix the tax system. For example, we have 1,000 trillionaires in America. Billionaires in America. And what's happening? They're in a situation where they, in fact, pay 8.2% in taxes. If they just paid 24%, 25%, either one of those numbers, they'd raise $500 million, billion dollars, I should say, in a 10-year period. We'd be able to wipe out his debt. We'd be able to help make sure that all those things we need to do, child care, elder care, making sure
Yeah,
that we
look up
continue
the
to
top
strengthen
1%
our
owners and
healthcare
how much
system,
of the
making sure
total
that we're
tax
able to
revenue,
make
what
every
percentage
single
that is. I think it's the
solitary
top 1 or
person,
2% of earners pay like
eligible for what I've been able to do.
40% of the total tax revenue.
With
Right.
COVID, excuse me, with dealing with everything we have to do with.
Spit it out, Joe.
Look, we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
Well, he's right. He did beat Medicare. He beat it to death, and he's destroying Medicare because all of these people are coming in. They're putting them on Medicare. They're putting them on Social Security. They're going to destroy Social Security. This man is going to single-handedly destroy Social Security. These millions and millions of people coming in,
And
they're
the
trying
VA,
to put
they're
them on
paying
Social Security.
illegal
He
stuff.
will wipe out Social Security. He will wipe out Medicare. So he was right in the way he finished that sentence. And it's a shame. What's happened to our country in the last 4 years is not to be believed. Foreign countries, I'm friends with a lot of people, they cannot believe what happened to the United States of America. We're no longer respected. They don't like
Oh,
us.
that's Putin.
We give them everything they want, and they think we're stupid. They think we're very stupid people. What we're doing for other countries, and they do nothing for us. What this man has done is absolutely criminal.
Thank you, President Trump. Dana?
This is the first presidential election since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. This morning, the court ruled on yet another abortion case, temporarily allowing emergency abortions to continue in Idaho, despite that state's restrictive ban. Former President Trump, you take credit for the decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, which returned the issue of abortion to the states.
There we go. At least she
However,
told the truth on
The
that.
federal
Yes.
government still plays a role in whether or not women have access to abortion pills. They're used in about 2/3 of all abortions. As president, would you block abortion medication?
First of all, the Supreme Court just approved the abortion bill, and I agree with their decision to have done that, and I will not block it. And if you look at this whole question that you're asking, complex, but not really complex. 51 years ago, you had Roe v. Wade, and everybody wanted to get it back to the states. Everybody, without exception. Democrats, Republicans, liberals, conservatives, everybody wanted it back. Religious leaders. And what I did is I put 3 great Supreme Court justices on the court, and they happened to vote in favor of killing Roe v. Wade and moving it back to the states. This is something that everybody wanted. Now, 10 years ago or so, they started talking about how many weeks and how many this, and getting into other things. But every legal scholar throughout the world, the most respected, wanted it brought back to the states. I did that. Now the states are working it out. If you look at Ohio, it was a decision that was an end result that was a little bit more liberal than you would have thought. Kansas, I would say the same thing. Texas is different. Florida is different. But they're all making their own decisions right now. And right now, the states control it. That's the vote of the people. Like Ronald Reagan, I believe in the exceptions. I am a person that believes. And frankly, I think it's important to believe in the exceptions. Some people, you have to follow your heart. Some people don't believe in that. But I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and the life of the mother. I think it's very important. Some people don't. Follow your heart. But you have to get elected also. And because that has to do with other things. You got to get elected. The problem they have is they're radical because they will take the life of a child in the 8th month, the 9th month, and even after birth.
They want
After
free for
birth.
all in every
term.
state.
Yeah.
They want free for all in all states.
He was willing
Not
to
all
do
states
this.
want that.
He said, we'll put the baby aside and we'll determine what we do with the baby, meaning we'll kill the baby. What happened is we brought it back to the states, and the country is now coming together on this issue. It's been a great thing.
Thank you. President Biden?
It's been a terrible thing, what you've done. The fact is that the vast majority of constitutional scholars supported Roe when it was decided. Supported Roe. And that's this idea that they're all against it is just ridiculous. And this is the guy who says the state should be able to have it. We're in a state where in 6 weeks, you don't even know if you're pregnant, but you cannot see a doctor and have him decide on what your circumstances are, whether you need help. The idea that states are able to do this is a little like saying we're going to turn civil rights back to the states. Let each state have a different rule. Look, there's so many young women who have been, including a young woman who just was murdered, and he went to the funeral. The idea that she was murdered by an immigrant coming in, they talk about that. But here's the deal: there's a lot of young women who are being raped by their in-laws, by their spouses, brothers and sisters, it's just ridiculous, and they can do nothing about it. And they try to arrest them when they cross state lines.
Thank you.
There have been many young women murdered by the same people he
Poor
allows
Biden.
to come
I mean,
across our border.
he needs
We have
a
border that's
vitamin
the most
shot.
dangerous place anywhere in the world. Considered the most dangerous place anywhere in the world. And he opened it up, and these killers are coming into our country. And they are raping and killing
glad they
women.
pivoted to
And it's a
an
terrible
issue that
thing. As
affects
far as the
absolutely
abortion is
everyone,
concerned,
not
it
just
is now
Sam
back with the
Callis, but
states. The
everyone.
states are voting. In many cases, it's frankly a very liberal decision. In many cases, it's the opposite. But they're voting, and it's bringing it back to the vote of the people, which is what everybody wanted, including the founders, if they knew about this issue, which frankly they didn't. But they would have, everybody wanted it brought back. Ronald Reagan wanted it brought back. He wasn't able to get it. Everybody wanted it brought back, and many presidents had tried to get it back. I was the one to do it. And again, this gives it the vote of the people, and that's where they wanted it. Every legal scholar wanted it that way.
Staying on the topic of abortion, President Biden, 7 states, I'll let you do that. This is the same topic. 7 states have no legal restrictions on how far into a pregnancy a woman can obtain an abortion. Do you support any legal limits on how late a woman should be able to terminate a pregnancy?
I support Roe v. Wade, which had 3 trimesters. The first time is between the woman and the doctor. Second time is between the doctor and an extreme situation. The third time is between the doctor, between the woman and the state. The idea that the politicians, that the founders wanted the politicians to be the ones making decisions about women's health is ridiculous. That's the last. No politician should be making that decision. A doctor should be making those decisions. That's how it should be run. That's what you're going to do. And if I'm elected, I'm going to restore Roe v. Wade.
So that means he can take the life of the baby in the 9th month and even after birth, because some states, Democrat run, take it after birth. Again, the former governor of Virginia, put the baby down, then we decide what to do with it. So he's willing to, as we say, rip the baby out of the womb in the 9th month and kill the baby. Nobody wants that to happen, Democrat or Republican. Nobody wants it to happen.
You're lying. That is simply not true.
Well, then answer the question, Joe.
Does not provide for that. That's not the circumstance. Only if a woman's life is in danger, she's going to die. That's the only circumstance in which that can happen. But we are not for late-term abortion, period. Period, period.
Under Roe v. Wade, you have late-term abortion. You can do whatever you want, depending on the state. You can do whatever you want. We don't think that's a good thing. We think it's a radical thing. We think the Democrats are the radicals, not the Republicans.
For 51 years, that was the law. 51 years, constitutional scholarship said it was the right way to go. 51 years. And it was taken away because this guy put very conservative members on the
It wasn't the law.
He takes credit for
It's
taking
not a law.
it away.
It was an opinion.
What's he going to do, in fact, if if the MAGA Republicans, he gets elected.
MAGA was on there.
Republicans control the Congress, and they pass a universal ban on abortion, period, across the board. At 6 weeks or 7 or 8 or 10 weeks, something very, very conservative. Is he going to sign that bill? I'll veto it. He'll sign it.
Thank you.
Let's turn now to the issue of immigration and border security. President Biden, a record number of migrants have illegally crossed the southern border on your watch. Overwhelming border states and overburdening cities such as New York and Chicago, and in some cases causing real safety and security concerns. Given that, why should voters trust you to solve this crisis?
Because we worked very hard to get a bipartisan agreement that not only changed all of that, but made sure that we are in a situation where
That's a lie.
you had no circumstance where they could come across the border with the number of border police there are now. We significantly increased the number of asylum officers. Significantly, by the way, the Border Patrol endorsed my position. In addition to that, we found ourselves in a situation where when he was president, he was separating babies from their mothers, putting them in cages, making sure they
Which Obama did.
It was a policy from under Obama and your administration, Joe.
I've changed the law. What's happened? I've changed it in a way that now you're in a situation where there are 40% fewer people coming across the border legally. It's better than when he left office.
Are you kidding me?
Total ban on the total initiative relative to what we're going to do with patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of this. Look, safest border in the history of our country.
I don't know what he said.
All he had to do was leave it. All he had to do was leave it. He decided to open up our border, open up our country.
It's like a toddler in a store. All you have to do is not touch it.
From prisons, people that are from mental institutions, insane asylum, terrorists. We have the largest number of terrorists coming into our country right now. All terrorists, all over the world, not just in South America, all over the world. They come from the Middle East, everywhere. All over the world, they're pouring in. And this guy just left it open. And he didn't need legislation, because I didn't have legislation. I said, close the border. We had the safest border in history. In that final couple of months of my presidency, we had, according to Border Patrol, who is great, and by the way, who endorsed me for president, but I won't say that, but they endorsed me for president. Brandon, just speak to him. But look, we had the safest border in history. Now we have the worst border in history. There's never been anything like it. And people are dying all over the place, including the people that are coming out in caravans.
President Trump. President Biden?
The only terrorist who's done anything crossing the border is one who came along and killed 3, under his administration, killed an Al-Qaeda person coming in his administration, killed 3 American soldiers. Killed 3 American soldiers.
What is he?
ISIS has just apprehended a bunch of people from Turkmenistan and Kazakhstan coming across the border right now.
There's no data to support what he said.
2 days ago.
He's exaggerating. He's lying.
President Trump, staying on the topic of immigration, you've said that you're going to carry out, quote, the largest domestic deportation operation in American history, unquote. Does that mean that you will deport every undocumented immigrant in America, including those who have jobs, including those whose spouses are citizens, and including those who have lived here for decades? And if so, how will you do it?
Just 1 second. He said we killed 3 people. The people we killed are al-Baghdadi and Soleimani, the 2 greatest terrorists, biggest terrorists anywhere in the world. And it had a huge impact on everything, not just border, on everything. He's the one that killed people with the bad water, including hundreds of thousands of people dying, and also killing our citizens when they come in. We are living right now in a rat's nest. They're killing our people in New York, in California, in every state in the union, because we
just
don't have
buried a
borders anymore.
12-year-old girl today in Houston.
And because of his ridiculous, insane, and very stupid policies, people are coming in and they're killing our citizens at a level that we've never seen. We call it migrant crime. I call it Biden migrant crime. They're killing our citizens at a level that we've never seen before. And you're reading it like these 3 incredible young girls over the last few days. One of them, I just spoke to the mother, and he just had the funeral for this girl, 12 years old. This is horrible what's taken place. What's taken place in our country, we're literally an uncivilized country now. He doesn't want it to be. He just doesn't know. He opened the borders. Nobody's ever seen anything like. And we have to get a lot of these people out, and we have to get them out fast, because they're going to destroy our country. Just take a look at where they're living. They're living in luxury hotels in New York City and other places, our veterans are on the street. They're dying because he doesn't care about our veterans. He doesn't care. He doesn't like the military at all. And he doesn't care about our veterans. Nobody been worse.
Worst
I
recruiting
had the
crisis
highest approval
ever.
rating for veterans taking care of the VA. He has the worst. He's gotten rid of all the things that I approved.
He's got the
Choice,
VA
I got through
prioritizing
Congress.
illegal immigrants
All
over
the different
veterans.
things I approved, they abandoned. We had by far the highest, and now it's down in less than half because he's done all these great things that we did. And I think he did it just because I approved it, which is crazy. But he has killed so many people at our border by allowing all of these people to come in. And it's a very sad day in America.
President Biden, you have the mic.
Every single thing he said is a lie. Every single one. For example, veterans are a hell of a lot better off since I passed the PACT Act.
What's your proof?
1 million of them now have insurance and their families have it. Their families have it because what happened, whether it was Agent Orange or burn pits, they're all being covered now. And his group opposed that. We're also in a situation where we have great respect for veterans. My son spent a year in Iraq, living right next to one of those burn pits, came back with stage 4 glioblastoma. I was recently in France for D-Day, and I spoke all about those heroes that died. I went to the World War II cemetery, World War I cemetery he refused to go to. He was standing with his 4-star general, and he told me, he said, I don't want to go in there because they're a bunch of losers and suckers. My son was not a loser, was not a sucker. You're the sucker, you're the loser.
President Trump?
First of all, that was a made-up quote, suckers and losers. They made it up. It was in a third-rate magazine that's failing, like many of these magazines. He made that up. He put it in commercials. We've notified him. We had 19 people that said I didn't say it. And think of this. Who would say I'm at a cemetery or I'm talking about our veterans? Because nobody's taken better care. I'm so glad this came up, and he brought it up. There's nobody that's taken better care of our soldiers than I have. To think that I would, in front of generals and others, say suckers and losers. We have 19 people that said it was never said by me. It was made up by him, just like Russia was made up, just like the 51 intelligence agents are made up, just like the new thing with the 16 economists are talking.
Talking about Hunter Biden's
51
laptop,
intelligence agents
which is
said
true.
that the laptop was Russia disinformation. It wasn't. That came from his son, Hunter. It wasn't Russia disinformation. He made up the suckers and losers, so he should apologize to me right now.
4-star general standing to your side who was on your staff who said you said it, period. That's number one. And number two, the idea that I have to apologize to you for anything along the line. We've done more for veterans than any president has in American history. And they now are their family. The only sacred obligation we have as a country is to care for our veterans when they come home and their families and equip them when they go to war.
It wasn't
That's
Trump
what we're
kicking
doing.
out
That's what the VA
90-something-year-old
is doing
veterans
now.
to make room
They're
for
doing
illegal
more for
immigrants.
veterans than ever before in our history.
All right, thank you so much.
Let's move to the topic of foreign policy. I want to begin with Russia's war against Ukraine, which is now in its third year. Former President Trump, Russian President Vladimir Putin says he'll only end this war if Russia keeps the Ukrainian territory it has already claimed and Ukraine abandons its bid to join NATO. Are Putin's terms acceptable to you?
First of all, our veterans and our soldiers can't stand this guy. They can't stand him. They think he's the worst commander-in-chief, if that's what you call
Okay,
him,
please do answer the
that
question.
we've ever had. They can't stand him. So let's get that straight. And they like me more than just about any of them. And that's based on every single bit of information. As far as Russia and Ukraine, if we had a real president, the president that knew, that was respected
that
by
look?
Putin, he would have never
What
never
does that
invaded
look?
Ukraine.
What is he
A
doing?
lot of people
He's
are dead
frozen.
right now, much more than people know. You know,
fact,
they talk about
he's
numbers.
staring
He
at
could
the
double
ground
those
a lot.
numbers, maybe triple those numbers. He did nothing to stop it. In fact, I think he encouraged Russia from going in. I'll tell you what
Well, they
happened.
saw
He was so
weakness
bad
from
with
the withdrawal
Afghanistan.
from
It was such a
Afghanistan.
horrible embarrassment, most embarrassing moment in the history of our country.
People
that when
hanging
Putin
from the
watched
plane.
that and he saw the incompetence, that he should have fired those generals like I fired the one that you mentioned. And so he's got no love. Those generals, no general got fired for the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, Afghanistan, where we left billions of dollars of equipment behind. We lost 13 beautiful soldiers and 38 soldiers were obliterated. And by the way, we left people behind too. We left American citizens
Thank you.
behind.
Translators.
Yep.
When Putin saw that, he said, you know what? I think we're going to go in and maybe take this was his dream. I talked to him about it, his dream. The difference is he never would have invaded Ukraine, never. Just like
If we had
Israel
Middle
would have never been invaded in a million years by Hamas. You know why? Because Iran was broke with me. I wouldn't let anybody do business with them. They ran out of money. They were broke. They had no money for Hamas. They had no money
Biden
for
released
anything. No money for
billions of
terror.
dollars.
That's why you had no terror at all during my administration. This place, the whole world.
People money, they're going to do evil things.
President Biden?
How much malarkey in my whole life.
Malarkey. It's on our bingo card. Malarkey's on bingo card.
Iran attacked American troops.
Again, go to our community tab to take a look at the bingo card list.
And he did nothing about it. Recently, not when he was president, they attacked. He said they're just having headaches. That's all it is. But he didn't do a thing when the attack took place, number one. Number two, we got over 100,000 Americans and others out of Afghanistan during that airlift. Number three, we found ourselves in a situation where if you take a look at what Trump did in Ukraine, this guy told Trump, do whatever you want and do whatever you want. And that's exactly what Trump did to Putin, encourage him, do whatever you want. And he went in. Listen to what he said when he went in. He was going to take Kyiv in 5 days, remember? Because it's part of the Soviet Union. That's what he wanted to reestablish, Kyiv. And he, in fact, didn't do it at all. He wasn't able to get it done. And they've lost thousands and thousands.
Yeah, but that wasn't because of you, Biden.
Troops.
President Trump,
I
I'm gonna
never
come back
said
to you
that.
for 1 minute. I just want to go back to my original question, which is, are Putin's terms acceptable to you? Keeping the
No, they're
territory
not
in Ukraine?
acceptable. No, they're not acceptable.
So how do you fix
But
it?
look, this is a war that never should have started. If we had a leader in this war, he led everybody along. He's given $200 billion now or more to Ukraine. He's given $200 billion. That's a lot of money. I don't think there's ever been anything like it. Every time that Zelensky comes to this country, he walks away with $60 billion. He's the greatest salesman ever. And I'm not knocking him. I'm not knocking anything. I'm only saying the money that we're spending on this war, and we shouldn't be spending.
We get nothing
it
from
should have
it.
never happened. I will have that war settled between Putin and Zelensky as president-elect before I take office on January 20th. I'll have that war settled. People being killed so needlessly, so stupidly, and I will get it settled, and I'll get it settled fast before I take office.
But let's just talk about the $200 billion.
The fact is that Putin is a
Biden
war
has
criminal.
trickled
He's
in
thousands
weapon
and thousands
systems.
of people.
If he would
And
just
he has made one
be
thing
decisive
clear.
and
He wants to
give the
reestablish
exact equipment
what
that they
was
need
part of
right at
Soviet
the
Empire.
same time they
Not
need
just
it,
a piece,
then
he
that
wants
war
all
would have
of
been over.
Ukraine. That's what he wants. And then you think he'll stop there? Do you think he'll stop when if he takes Ukraine? What do you think happens to Poland? What do you think of Belarus? What do you think happens to those NATO countries?
And
so if
Trump
you want a
just
war,
said he would
you ought to
not
find
give
out what he's going to do,
Putin
because if in fact he does what he says and walks away,
territory.
by the way, all that money we give Ukraine are from weapons we make here in the United States. We give them the weapons, not the money at this point. And our
At this
NATO
point.
allies have
Yeah,
produced
it's
as much
gonna, the weapons are gonna run
funding
out.
for
You gotta pay to
Ukraine as
replace
we
the
have.
weapons.
That's why.
And it was
that's
Trump's
why-
idea. It was Trump's
Thank you.
idea
Moving on to the Middle East.
to make it a
In
loan
October,
as opposed to giving the
Hamas
money.
attacked
And then the
Israel,
Biden administration
killing more than 1,000
grabbed
people
Trump's
and taking
idea
hundreds of
on loaning them
hostages.
the money.
Among those held and thought to still be alive are 5 Americans. Israel's response has killed thousands of Palestinians and created a humanitarian crisis in Gaza. President Biden, you've put forward
Yes, you lifted sanctions
proposal
off of
to
Iran,
resolve
which funds
this conflict.
Hamas.
But so far, Hamas has not released the remaining hostages, and Israel is continuing its military offensive in Gaza.
Yes, they should.
So what additional
Close your mouth,
leverage
dude.
will you use to get Hamas and Israel to end the war? You have 2 minutes.
Number one.
I'll pay $10 if
Everyone
Trump comes
from
over there with a
the
bucket.
United Nations Security Council, straight through to the G7, to the Israelis, and Netanyahu himself have endorsed the plan I put forward. Which has 3 stages to it. The first stage is train the hostages for a ceasefire. Second phase is a ceasefire with additional conditions. The third phase is the end of the war. The only one who wants the war to continue is Hamas. Number one. They're
Yeah,
the only
and
ones
you wanna
standing out.
negotiate with
We're
them.
still pushing hard to get them to accept. In the meantime, what's happened? In Israel, we're trying to say the only thing I've denied Israel was 2,000-pound bombs. They don't work very well in populated areas. They kill a lot of innocent people. We're providing Israel with all the weapons they need and when they need them. And by the way, I'm the guy that organized the world against Iran when they had a full-blown intercontinental ballistic missile attack on Israel. No one was hurt. No one Israeli was accidentally killed, and it stopped. We saved Israel. We are the biggest producer of support for Israel of anyone in the world. And so those are two different things. Hamas cannot be allowed to be continued. We continue to send our experts.
Yet you're funding
to how they can get
no
Hamas
sanctions on
like we did
Iran.
Bin Laden. You don't have to do it.
You have to
And
cut
by
the head
way,
off the
they've
snake.
Greatly weakened Hamas. Greatly weakened, and they should be. They should be
You have to
eliminated.
weaken Iran.
But you've got to be careful for what using certain weapons among population centers.
Just going back to Ukraine for 1 second. We have an ocean separating us. The European nations together have spent 100 billion, or maybe more than that, less than us. Why doesn't he call them and say, you got to put up your money like I did with NATO? I got them to
they're
put
a
up
lot
hundreds
closer,
of billions
lot
of
more skin
dollars.
in
The
the game.
Secretary General of NATO said Trump did the most incredible job I've ever seen. They wouldn't have any, they were going out of business. We were spending almost 100% of the money was paid by us. He didn't do that. He's getting all, you got to ask these people to put up the money. We're over $100 billion more spent, and it has a bigger impact on them because of location, because we have an ocean in between. You got to ask them, as far as Israel and Hamas, Israel's the one that wants to go. He said the only one that wants to keep going is Hamas. Actually, Israel is the one, and you should let him go and let him finish the job. He doesn't want to do it. He's become like a Palestinian, but they don't like him because he's a very bad Palestinian. He's a weak one.
You have a minute?
I've never heard so much foolishness. This is the guy who wants.
Well, I thought he was
to
gonna say
NATO.
malarkey
You're gonna
again.
see NATO. He's going to pull out of NATO. The idea that we have, our strength lies in our alliances as well. It may be a big ocean, but are we ever able to avoid a war in Europe, a major war in Europe? What happens if, in
Yeah,
fact,
but they want to
we
be
have
our allies
Putin
if we're
continue
strong,
to go
too.
into NATO?
Because it helps
We have an
them,
Article
too.
5 agreement. Attack on one is attack on all. You want to start the nuclear war he keeps talking about, go ahead. Let Putin go in and control Ukraine and then move on to Poland and other places. See what happens then.
He didn't
has
say
no
stop
idea what the
funding,
hell
he
he's
said
talking about.
have others
And by
help
the way,
more.
I got 50 other nations around the world to support Ukraine, including Japan and South Korea, because they understand that this kind of dislocation has a serious threat to the whole world peace. No major war in Europe has ever been able to be contained just to Europe.
President Trump, just to follow up, would you support the creation of an independent Palestinian state in order to achieve peace in the region?
I'd have to see, but before we do that, the problem we have is that we spend all the money. So they kill us on trade. I made great trade deals with the European nations because if you add them up, they're about the same size economically. Their economy is about the same size as the United States. And they were no cars, they don't want anything that we have, but we're supposed to take their cars, their food, their everything, their agriculture. I changed that. But the big thing I changed is they don't want to pay. And the only reason that he can play games with NATO is because I got them to put up hundreds of billions of dollars. I said,
They're supposed to
and
pay
he's right about
2%
this.
of their
I said,
GDP.
no,
And
I'm not
now
gonna support
most of
NATO
the
if
countries
you
are
don't
paying
pay.
2%.
They asked me that question. Would you guard us against Russia at a very secret meeting of the 28 states at that time, nations at that time? And they said, no, if you don't pay, I won't do that. And you know what happened? Billions and billions of dollars came flowing
They
in
started
the next
paying.
day and the next months. But now we're in the same position. We're paying everybody's
Thank you.
bills.
Let's turn to the issue of democracy.
Yeah, no one's
Former
going to pay
President
more than they
Trump,
have to. That's just
I
common
want to ask
sense.
you about January 6, 2021.
Oh,
After you
goodness, there we
rallied your
go.
supporters that day,
January 26
some of you
January
stormed
6 is on the
Capitol
bingo
to
card.
Stop the constitutionally mandated counting of electoral votes. As president, you swore an oath to, quote, preserve, protect, and defend, unquote,
Remember,
the
people, he
Constitution.
did leave.
What do you say to voters who believe that you violated that oath through your actions and inaction on January 6th and worry that you'll do it again?
Well, I don't think too many believe that. And let me tell you about January 6th. On January 6th, we had a great border. Nobody coming through, very few. On January 6th, we were energy independent. On January 6th, we had the lowest taxes ever. We had the lowest regulations ever. On January 6th, we were respected all over the world. All over the world, we
Had
were
not started
respected.
any more
And then he
wars.
comes in, and we're now laughed at. We're like a bunch of stupid people. that what happened to the United States' reputation under this man's leadership is horrible, including weaponization, which I'm sure at some point you'll be talking about, where he goes after his political opponent because he can't beat him fair and square.
There you go.
You have 80 seconds left. My question was,
Lawfare.
what do you say to those voters who believe that you violated your constitutional oath through your actions and inaction on January 6, 2021, and worry that you'll do it again?
Well, I didn't say that to anybody. I said peacefully and patriotically. And Nancy Pelosi, you just watched the news from 2 days ago, on tape to her daughter, who's a
She's like,
documentary
I take responsibility
filmmaker,
for
what
what?
they say. But she's saying, oh, no, it's my responsibility. I was responsible for this. Because I offered her 10,000 soldiers or National Guard, and she turned them down. And the mayor in writing, by the way, the mayor, in writing, turned it down, the mayor of D.C. They turned it down. I offered 10,000 because I could see, I had virtually nothing to do. They asked me to go make a speech. I could see what was happening. Everybody was saying
Biden
they're going
just
to be there on
touched his
January 6th.
ear.
They're going to be there. And
Is
I
there-
said, you know what?
someone
That's
needs to
a lot
check
of
to see
people
if he
coming. You
has
could feel
some
it.
type of
You could
communication
feel it
device
too,
in there.
And you could feel it. And I said, they ought to have some National Guard or whatever. And I offered it to her. And she now admits that she turned it down. And it was the same day she was, I don't know, she can't be very happy with her daughter because it made her into a liar. She said, I take full responsibility for January 6th.
Taking responsibility only counts if there's something that happens or people
He
hear it.
encouraged those folks to go up on Capitol Hill, number one. I sat in the dining room.
He
off
did
the
not
Oval Office.
organize
She sat
the
there
event.
for 3 hours watching, begging, being begged by his vice president and a number of his colleagues on the Republican side as well to do something, to call for a stop, to end it. Instead, they talked about these people being patriots and great patrons of America. In fact, he says he'll now forgive them for what they've done. They've been convicted. He says he wants to commute their sentences and say that no.
Some of the people weren't
He
even
went to
there.
every single court in the nation. I don't know how many cases, scores of cases, including the Supreme Court, and they
Bless you.
said no. This guy is responsible for doing what was done. He did do a damn thing, and these people should be in jail, and they should be the ones who are being held accountable. And he wants to let them all out. And now he says if he loses again, such a whiner that he is, that there could be a bloodbath.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
What they've done to some people that are so innocent, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. What you have done, how you've destroyed the lives of so many people. When they ripped down Portland, when they ripped down many other cities, you go to Minnesota, Minneapolis, what they've done there with the fires all over the city. If I didn't bring in the National Guard, that city would have been destroyed. When you look at all of they took over big chunks of Seattle. I was all set to bring in the National Guard. They heard that, they saw them coming, and they left immediately. What he said about this whole subject is so off. Peacefully patriotic. One other thing, the Unselect Committee, which is basically two horrible Republicans that are all gone now out of office, and Democrats, all Democrats, they destroyed and deleted all of the information they found because they found out we were right. We were right. And they deleted and destroyed all of the information. They should go to jail for that. If a Republican did that, they'd go to jail.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden, I want to give you a minute.
The only person on this stage is a convicted felon, this man I'm looking at right now.
Convicted felons on the bingo card.
What he's telling you is simply not true. The fact is that there was no effort on his part to stop what was going on up on Capitol Hill. And all those people, every one of those who were convicted, deserves to be convicted.
Some of the
idea
people
that they
convicted
didn't
were
kill
not even
somebody,
there.
Just went in and broke down doors, broke the windows, occupied offices, turned over desks, turned them over statues. The idea that those people are patriots. When I asked him about first the two debates we had, first time around, I said, will you denounce the Proud Boy? He said, no, I'll tell them to stand by. The idea he's refusing, will you denounce these guys? Will you denounce the people we're talking about now? Will you denounce the people who attacked that Capitol? What are you going to do?
I'm going to give you a minute, President Trump, for a follow-up question I have. After a jury convicted you of 34 felonies last month, you said if reelected, you would, quote, have every right to go after, unquote, your political opponents. You just talked about members of the Select Committee on January 6th to jail. your main political opponent is standing on stage with you tonight. Can you clarify exactly what it means about you feeling you have every right to go after your political opponents?
Well, is going to be success. We're going to make this country successful again, because right's a failing nation. My retribution is going to be success. But when he talks about a convicted felon, his son is a convicted felon at a very high level. His son is convicted, going to be convicted probably numerous other times. Should have been convicted before, but his Justice Department let the statute of limitations lapse on the most important things. But he could be a convicted felon as soon as he gets out of office. Joe could be a convicted felon with all of the things that he's done.
But
he's done horrible things. All of the death caused at the border, telling the Ukrainian people that we're going to want $1 billion or you change the prosecutor. Otherwise, you're not getting $1 billion. If I ever said that, that's quid pro quo. That we're not going to do anything. We're not going to give you $1 billion unless you change your prosecutor having to do with the son. This man is a criminal. This man, you're lucky. You're lucky. I did nothing wrong. We'd have a system that was rigged and disgusting. I did nothing wrong.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden, you have said, I'm coming right to you, sir. You want to respond? Go ahead. I'll give you a minute to respond.
The idea that I did anything wrong, what you're talking about, is outrageous. It's simply a lie. 2, the idea that you have a right to seek retribution against any American just because you're president is wrong. It's simply wrong. No president's ever spoken like that before. No president in our history has spoken like that before.
Says the man who met with the DA,
the crimes
Nathan
you
Wade.
are still charged with. And think of all the civil penalties you have. How many billions of dollars do you owe in civil penalties for molesting a woman in public, for doing a whole range of things, of having
who went on
sex
to
with a
brag
porn
about how
star
she's going to
on
spend
the
money?
night
No
while
real
your wife
victim
was
does
pregnant?
that.
Right.
What are you talking about? You have the morals of an alley cat.
Give you a minute, sir.
I didn't have sex with a porn star, number 1. Number 2, that was a case that was started and moved. They moved a high-ranking official, a DOJ, into the Manhattan DA's office to start that case. That case is going to be appealed and won. We had a very terrible judge, a horrible judge, Democrat. The prosecutor were all high-ranking Democrats, appointed people.
Whose daughter made money
both the
off of all
civil
this.
and the criminal. He basically went after his political opponent because he thought it was going to damage me. But when the public found out about these cases, because they understand it better than he does, he has no idea what these cases
record
are. But when they found
funding
out about
haul.
these cases, you know what they did? My poll numbers went up, way up. You know that because you're reporting it. And we took in more money in the last 2 weeks than we've ever taken in the history of any campaign. I don't think any campaign has ever taken. Hundreds of millions of dollars came pouring in because the public knows it's a scam and it's a guy that's after his political opponent because he can't win fair and square.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden, you have said, quote, Donald Trump and his MAGA Republicans are determined to destroy American democracy. Do you believe that the tens of millions of Americans who are likely to vote for President Trump will be voting against American democracy?
The more they know about what he's done, yes. The more they know about what he's done. And there's a lot more coming.
So now voting is undemocratic.
He's got a whole range of issues he has to face. I don't know what the juries will do, but I do know he has a real problem. And so the fact that, could you ever think you heard any president say that I'm going to seek retribution? Did you ever hear any president say that I thought Hitler had some good ideas? What got me involved to run the first place after my son
Says the
died
man
in
catering to Hamas,
Iraq because
who
of Iraq.
studies
I said I wasn't going to
Mein
vote again.
Kampf.
Charlottesville, Virginia. People coming out of the woods carrying swastikas on torches, and singing the same anti-Semitic bile they sang when back in Germany. And the young woman got killed. I spoke to the mother, and they asked him. They said, "What do you think of those people? The people the ones who got killed."
And now the Palestinian protesters carry swastikas that are Democrats.
Yep.
What American president would ever say, Nazis coming out of fields carrying torches, singing the same anti-Semitic bile, carrying swastikas, were fine people? And this is the guy who says Hitler's done some good things. I'd like to know what they are. The good things Hitler's done, that's what he said. This guy has no sense of American democracy.
President Trump.
Jake, both of you know that story has been totally wiped out because when you see the sentence, it said 100% exoneration on that. So he just keeps it going. He says he ran because of Charlottesville. He didn't run because of Charlottesville. He ran because it was his last chance. He's
Yeah,
not
he
equipped
ran
to be
like
president. You know it,
5
and I know
times
it. It's
before that.
ridiculous. We have a debate. We're trying to justify his presidency. His presidency is, without question, the worst presidency in the history of our country. We shouldn't be
Inflation,
having a debate about it. There's
low-ranking
nothing to debate.
military,
He made up the
recruiting
Charlottesville
efforts.
story, and you'll see it's debunked all over the place.
Multiple wars.
Every reasonable anchor has debunked it. And just the other day, it came out where it was fully debunked. It's a nonsense story. He knows that, and he didn't run because of Charlottesville. He used that as an excuse.
President Biden?
Who's he looking
It
at?
happened. All you have to do is that at the time.
Is
And
he
the
talking to
idea
dead
that
people?
Somehow that's
Who's he looking at?
I ran because I was worried that
I
I
guess
was
there's a
just
different
get
camera,
elected.
I don't know.
If he thought they were good people coming out of that forest, carrying those woods, carrying those torches, then he didn't deserve to be president. Didn't deserve to be president at all. And the idea that he's talking about all this being fabricated, we saw with our own eyes. We saw what happened on January 6th. We saw the people breaking through the windows. We saw people occupying his own vice president. Look, there's a reason why 40 of his 44 top cabinet officers refused to endorse him this time. His vice president hasn't endorsed him this time. So why? Why? They know him well. They serve with him. Why are they not endorsing him?
President Biden, we're going to be right back with more from the CNN presidential debate.
All right, so one thing I would like to bring up.
Okay,
is-
just real quick. We are, now switching the camera back over to us because we're not authorized to play any of these commercials. But really, we wanted to just talk about what it is that we're drinking on this fine evening.
The really important stuff first.
Exactly, because we've seen in the
kids are in
comments
bed.
that people are saying, "God, I need a drink." So we have been playing a little bit of a drinking game as well. And we have a bingo card. If you go to the community section of the YouTube channel, of the Azimuth Podcast YouTube channel, you can see a bingo card. And we've been calling out, hey, he said malarkey. Hey, he said ultra MAGA.
Convicted felon.
Convicted felon is on there as well. So make sure you check out that bingo
No
card.
one's fallen on the stage yet.
Nobody's fallen yet, but I should have put Joe Biden keeping his mouth open for some reason and looking off in the direction where the moderators aren't. But anyway, just to let you know what we're drinking, and we're not sponsored by any of this stuff, but I decided to go for some local microbreweries. So St. Arnold's is Houston's first microbrewery. And it's a really great location. So they have an art car IPA.
Yeah, and there's an art car parade every year, I believe in April.
And sponsored by them, I think.
And I have a cousin that wants to come, hopefully in September. And if you come, we'll take you to the brewery itself. So, and they have some food and they have some place, some space for the kids to run around. So
absolutely. And then I've got a St. Arnold Rich and Robust Tarnation as well. And this is almost a wine because of the 9.0% alcohol. So maybe only have half of that because that's like a bottle of wine. Then I've got a Karbach is another small microbrewery. They have been purchased by InBev, and because so we have not commenting because they don't have a YouTube account. That's okay. That's okay. So we have Hopadillo. Karbach is another microbrewery. Again, it's been purchased by InBev, so it's got a big giant parent company with it. But here's a new one that I actually haven't been to, but it's Eureka Heights. And it's right by our house, and it's this Final Boss Imperial IPA. And again, we're not sponsored by any of these, but I just decided to make sure that I was supporting local microbreweries. But Kimberly, what are you drinking?
I wanted to add a comment.
Sure.
Another brewery that we like is the Walking Stick Brewery because
Right.
they have a good little play area for a kid. So,
Always good.
I mean, that to me is a true definition of kid friendly. Is you have something for the grown-ups. They sell a little wine too. They usually have food trucks. Barrett and our friends that we go with will drink the beer, and then the kids play in the play area. So that's a true kid-friendly place. So anyway, not just because they have a kids menu. That's not enough, not enough. So I'm drinking a Menage a Trois. It's probably the cheapest wine that a 40-year-old can relax to and not feel like total crud the next day.
Okay.
Because we have a 5 and 7-year-old. And then when I want to take a little bit of breather in between but not drink water, I'll drink a light margarita mixer in between.
Okay, just real quick, we are back. So we're going to go ahead and switch. We have another commercial break coming up, but we're back right now.
For your presidency, Black families still earn far less than white families. Black mothers are still 3 times more likely to die for pregnancy-related causes, and Black Americans are imprisoned at 5 times the rate of white Americans. What do you say to Black voters who are disappointed that you haven't made more progress?
They acknowledge they made a lot of progress, number one. The fact of the matter is there's more small Black businesses that have been started than any time in history. Number 2, the wages.
Then why are so many Black Americans switching to Trump?
Time. Number 3, we're trying to provide housing for Black Americans and dealing with the segregation.
Even Charlemagne the God is saying he's disappointed in Biden.
Corporations that collude to keep people out of their houses. And in addition to that, we find that the impact on the choice that Black families have to make relative to child care is incredibly difficult. When we did the first major piece of legislation in the past, I was able to reduce Black child care costs. I cut them in half. We got to make sure we provide for child care costs. We got to make sure, because when you provide those child care protections, you increase economic growth because more people can be in the job market. So there's more to be done, considerably more to be done. But we've done a great deal so far, and I'm not letting up, and they know it.
You have 40 seconds left. What do you say to Black voters who are disappointed with the progress so far?
Oh, I need to answer the question.
Disappointed. Inflation is still hurting them badly. For example,
Your inflation.
For the idea that any Black family, first-time home buyer, should get a $10,000 tax credit to be able to buy their first home so they can get started. I made sure that we're in a situation where all those Black families and those Black individuals who provided had to take out student loans that were ballooning, that if they were engaged in nursing, doctor, and
$1,000 is nothing compared to how much home prices have increased.
If they paid their bills for 10 years on their student debt, all the rest is forgiven after 10 years.
That is not a policy. That was an existing policy. That was an existing policy. He didn't create that. That's an existing policy.
And he caused the inflation. He's blaming inflation.
Yep. And the increase in home prices.
Very bad. He caused the inflation, and it's killing Black families and Hispanic families and just about everybody. It's killing people. They can't buy groceries anymore. They can't. You look at the cost of food where it's doubled and tripled and quadrupled. Yes. They can't live. They're not living anymore. He caused this inflation. I gave him a country with essentially no inflation.
Many of my favorite drinks have doubled.
It's like 1.4% inflation.
He destroyed it with his Green New Scam and all this money that's being thrown out the window. He caused inflation. As sure as you're sitting there, the fact is that his big kill on the Black is the millions of people that he's allowed to come in through the border. They're taking 18, it could be 19 and even 20 million people taking Black jobs, and they're taking Hispanic jobs, and you haven't seen it yet, but you're going to see something that's going to be the worst in our history.
Thank you. President Biden?
There was no inflation when I became president. You know why?
Exactly.
The economy was flat on its back. 50% unemployment.
That would cause bad inflation.
Decimated the economy. That's why there was no inflation at the time. There were no jobs. We provided thousands of millions of jobs.
Which means everything would cost a lot.
In all communities, including minority communities. We made sure that they have health insurance. We have covered, the ACA has increased. I made sure that they're $8,000 per person in a family to get written off for the health care. But this guy wants to eliminate that. They've tried 50 times. He wants to get rid of the ACA again. And they're going to try again if they win. We find ourselves in a position where the idea that we're not doing anything, we put more police on the street than any administration has.
What?
He wants to cut the cops. We're providing for
That is a lie.
Sure people have a shot to make it.
The
There's a
city
lot
of
going
Houston
on,
can't
but
respond to
inflation, he
anything.
caused it
Someone breaks
by
into
his
your car, they're coming 3 hours later. If you get in a car crash, they're not
tremendous
coming
way
at
to
all.
handle the pandemic.
Thank you. Another persistent challenge is the climate crisis. 2023 was the hottest year in recorded history, and communities across the country are confronting the devastating effects of extreme heat, intensifying wildfires, stronger hurricanes, and rising
Please make
sea
sure
levels.
you're hitting that like
Former
button. It
President
really
Trump,
does help
you
us out.
vowed to end your opponent's climate initiatives, but will you take any action as president to slow the climate crisis?
Let me just go back to what he said about the police, how close the police are to him. Almost every police group in the nation from every state is supporting Donald J. Trump. Almost every police group.
Because they
And
want
what
to
he's
be able
done
to do
the
their
black
jobs.
population is horrible, including the fact that for 10 years he called them super predators. We can't, in the 1990s, we can't forget that. Super predators was his name, and he called it to them for 10, and they've taken great offense at it, and now they see it happening. But when they see what I did for criminal justice reform and for the historically black colleges and universities, where I funded them and got them all funded, and the
Record
opportunity
funding.
zones with
And we have
Tim,
trivia on
as
our
you know,
YouTube
Tim Scott
channel
was
featuring that.
incredible. He did a great job. Great senator from South Carolina. He came to me with the idea, and it was a great idea. It's one of the most successful economic development acts ever in the country, opportunity zones. And the biggest beneficiary are blacks. And that's why we have the best numbers with them in maybe ever. They're saying ever. I read this morning where ever, the best numbers. He's lost much of the black population because he's done a horrible job for black people. He's also done a horrible
If you vote for the other guy, you ain't
but
black.
when you see these millions
I
of
mean, come
people
on, telling you
pouring
how
into
to
our
think.
country, and they're going to take the jobs, and it's already started, and you haven't seen anything yet. It's a disaster.
You 38 seconds left. President Trump, will you take any action as president to slow the climate crisis?
So I want absolutely immaculate clean water, and I want absolutely clean air, and we had it. We had H2O. We had the best numbers ever, and we were using all forms of energy, all forms, everything. And yet, during my 4 years, I had the best environmental numbers ever. And my top environmental people gave me that statistic just before I walked on the stage, actually.
Because America takes
I
the
don't know where
greatest
the hell
care
he's
versus
been.
China.
The idea that anything he said is true. I passed the most extensive climate change legislation in history.
Benefiting China.
We find ourselves. in
He
the
does not sound
colleges.
well.
I came up with $15 billion for HBCUs,
sounds hoarse.
historic black universities and colleges, because
No,
they don't
Trump
have
did
those,
that.
they don't have the kind of contributors that they have to build these laboratories and the like. Any black student is capable in college of doing any white student can do. They just don't have the money, but now they'll be able to get those jobs in high tech. We're in a situation where the idea that he is claiming to have done something that had the cleanest water, he hadn't done a damn thing for the environment. He, out of the Paris Peace Accord, Climate Accord, I immediately joined it because if we reach 1.5 degrees Celsius at any one point, there's no way back. The only existential threat to humanity is climate change, and he didn't do a damn thing about it. He wants them to do all they've done. The Paris Accord was going to cost us $1 trillion, and China nothing, and Russia nothing, and India nothing. It was a ripoff of the
Put all the
United
burden
States.
on us, and everyone else gets
I
to do what
ended
they
it
want.
because I didn't want to waste that money because they treat us horribly. We were the only ones. It was costing us money. Nobody else was paying into it, and it was a disaster. But everything that he said just now, I'll give you an example. I heard him say before insulin. I'm the one that got the insulin down for the seniors. I took care of the seniors. What he's doing is destroying all of our medical programs because the migrants coming in, they want everybody. And look, I have the biggest heart on the stage, I guarantee you that. And I want to take care of people. But we're destroying our country. They're taking over our schools, our hospitals, and they're going to be taking over Social Security. He is destroying Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid.
And the VA.
The idea is that we, in fact, we were the only ones of consequence who were not members of the Paris Accord. How can we do anything if we're not able to? The United States can't get its pollution under control. One of the largest polluters in the world, number one. We're making significant progress. By 2035, we will have cut pollution in half. We've made significant progress. and we're continuing to make progress. We set up a climate corps where thousands of young people will learn how to deal with climate, just like the Peace Corps. And we're moving in directions that are going to significantly change the elements of cause of pollution. But the idea that he claims that he has the biggest heart up here and he's really concerned about pollution and about climate, I've not seen any indication of that. And by the way, with regard to prescription drugs, one company agreed that they would reduce the price to $35, which I was calling for, one, voluntarily. I made sure every company in the world, every pharmaceutical company.
Yeah, but that's capitalism. If one was $35 and he did it voluntarily, then everybody would go to that company, and so it would drive down the cost of insulin.
Social Security provides a
he doesn't
critical
understand basic
lifeline.
economics.
President Biden, if nothing is done to Social Security, seniors will see their benefits cut in just over 10 years. Will you name tonight one specific step that you're willing to take to keep Social Security solvent?
Yes, make the very wealthy begin to pay their fair share.
Fair share is on the bingo card.
Everybody making under $170,000 pays 6% of their income, of their paycheck, every single time they get a paycheck from the time the first one they get when they're 18 years old. The idea that they're going to, I propose
The only reason why he thinks that is because they know how to
millionaires pay 1%.
invest in things so that they don't have the income.
Cost of Social Security for anybody under
So it looks like they're not
after that,
paying,
it began to make the
but they're
wealthy
investing in their
begin to
company,
pay
they're
their fair
investing in
share
stocks, they're
by
investing in the
increasing from
economy.
1% beyond to be able to guarantee the program for life.
So you still have 82 seconds left. Are there any other measures that you think that would be able to help keep Social
1%,
Security solvent,
they're
or
paying
is
40%
enough?
taxes.
That
42% I think
will
is the
keep
highest.
us solvent, but the biggest thing I'll do if we defeat this man, because he wants to get rid of Social Security.
That's not true. Lie. That is a lie.
I don't think he has ever said
He's
that.
wanted to cut Social Security and Medicare, both times. And that's what, and if you
How
look
about you
at
cut it for
the
illegal
program
immigrants
before
first?
The House Republican caucus that he, I believe, supports is in fact want to cut it as well. The idea that we don't need to protect our seniors is ridiculous. And by the way,
No Republican wants to do that.
The Republic has greater health care coverage today than ever before. And on the ACA, as I said, you're in a circumstance where 400,000 people, 40 million people would not have insurance because they have a pre-existing condition. Only allows them to have that insurance.
The lady who does my eyelashes
that they in fact are
skips
part of the ACA.
insurance every
And by the
other
way, the
year
other
for
thing
her
is,
family.
We're in a situation where we're
It's a
talking about
husband,
education
her,
for
and her
Black communities.
7-year-old
Raise
child. So
the
every
number-
other
the
year of
amount
this
money
child's
for
life,
Pell Grants,
she does not
another
have health insurance
$8,000.
because
Anybody
it's
making
too
under
Expensive.
expensive.
$70,000 a year.
How
could
dare
be
you.
able to Get $15,000 toward the tuition. He just doesn't know what he's talking about.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump.
So I've dealt with politicians all my life. I've been on this side of the equation for the last 8 years. I've never seen anybody lie like this guy. He lies. I've never seen that he can look you in the face. About so many other things too.
He's been in
we
office for
mentioned the
50 years.
laptop,
He's
we
learned
mentioned
with the best
Russia,
with them.
Russia, Ukraine. Everything he does is a lie. It's misinformation and disinformation. The losers and suckers story that he made up is a total lie on the military. It's a disgrace. But Social Security, he's destroying it because millions of people are pouring into our country.
Kimberly,
And they're putting them onto
that's
Social
exactly what you
Security,
said,
they're putting them
because
onto Medicare, Medicaid. They're putting them in
the
our
more
hospitals.
people you have
They're
under the
taking
same
place
amount of
our
funds,
citizens there.
that's
What
gonna
they're
bring the
doing to
average down.
VA,
Of
to
course.
veterans,
And they're not
unbelievable.
paying into it.
Veterans are living in the
Yes,
street,
they never
and
paid
these
into
people
it.
are living in luxury hotels. He doesn't know what he's doing, and
Or what's
it's
it
really
called,
coming back. I've never
Colony
seen
Ridge,
such
just north of
anger
Houston?
in our country before.
President Biden.
The idea that veterans are not being taken care of, I told you before. And by the way, when I said suckers and losers, he acknowledged after that he fired that general. That general got fired because
For
he's the
spreading
one who
lies.
acknowledged that that's what he said. He was the one standing with Trump when he said it, number one. Number two, the idea that we're going to be in a situation where all these millions and millions, the way he talks about it, illegal aliens are coming into the country and taking away our jobs. There's a reason why we have the fastest growing economy in the world. The reason why we have the most successful economy in the world. We're doing any other nation in the world. And by the way, those 15 Nobel laureates he talked about being phony, those 15 Nobel laureates, economists, they all said that if Trump is reelected, we're likely to have a recession and inflation is going to increasingly go up. And by the way, worst president in history, 159 presidential scholars voted in him the worst president in the history of the United States of America.
President Biden, thank
And
you so
how
much.
did
Let's
they
turn to
vote?
the cost of child care, which many American families struggle to afford. President Trump, both you and President Biden have tried to address this issue, but the average cost of child care in this country has risen to more than $11,000 a year per child. For many families, the cost of child care for 2 children is more than their rent. In your second term, what would you do to make child care more affordable?
Just to go back, the general got fired because he was no good. And if he said that, that's why he made it up. But we have 19 people that said I didn't say it, and they're very highly respected, much more so than him. The other thing is, he doesn't fire people. He never fired people. I've never seen him fire anybody. I did fire a lot. I fired Comey because he was no good. I fired a lot of the top people at the FBI, drained the swamp. They were no good.
I want his
Not easy to
ear
fire
checked to
people.
make sure he
They
doesn't have
paid price for it,
a
but they were no
transmission
good.
device.
I inherited these people. I didn't put them there. I didn't put Comey there. He was no
Well,
good.
they deserve to be
fired
fired.
him. This guy hasn't fired anybody. He never fires. He should have fired every military man that was involved with that the Afghanistan horror show.
Just with
The
Israel
most
and that
embarrassing moment in the
UN
history of our
aid van
country.
that
He didn't fire. Did you
got
fire
bombed?
anybody?
Like,
Did
3
you
people
fire
got fired
anybody
from
that's
that.
on the border that's allowed us to have the worst border in the history of the world? Did anybody get fired for allowing 18 million people? Many
No,
from
because they're
prisons,
doing it at his
many
direction.
From mental institutions. Did you fire anybody that allowed our country to be destroyed? Joe, our country is being destroyed as you and I sit up here and waste a lot of time on this debate. This shouldn't be a debate. He is the worst president. He just said about me because I said it. But look, he's the worst president in the history of our country. He's destroyed our country. Now all of a sudden, he came out with a nothing deal. Used it a little bit, like this much. It's insignificant.
But he done it 3
He
years
wants
ago.
open
It's
borders.
also like
He wants our
110
country to either be
degrees
destroyed,
outside
or he wants to pick up
for
those
the entire
people
southern
as
border.
voters. And I don't think we just can't let it happen. If he wins this election, our country doesn't have a chance, not even a chance, of coming out of this rut. We probably won't have a country left anymore. That's how bad it is. He is the worst in history by far.
Thank you, President Trump. President
It
Biden.
sounds
We're the
hyperbolic,
most
but he's not
admired
wrong.
country in the world. We're the United States of America. There's nothing beyond our capacity. We have the finest military in the history of the world, the finest in the history of the world. No one thinks we're weak. No one wants to
Ask
screw around
Putin.
with us.
Ask Putin, ask China, ask
Putin,
North Korea, ask
Putin's interview
Iran.
with Tucker
Talking about
Carlson. I
worst
mean, come
presidents.
on. There
I
was
in
zero
Turkey.
respect for
Look
the
it up,
United
go
States of
online.
America in that interview.
159 or 58, don't hold me the exact number, presidential historians, they've had meetings and they voted who was the worst president in American history, one through best to worst. They said he was the worst in all of American history. That's a fact. That's not conjecture. He can argue they're wrong, but that's what they voted. The idea that he is doing anything to deal with child care, he did virtually nothing to child care.
And what have you
we
done?
We should significantly increase the child care tax credit. We should significantly increase the availability of women and men or single parents to be able to go back to work. And we should encourage businesses to.
It was actually Trump administration that had a bunch of money going into the child care system that's expiring, and Biden could fix that.
We have
if he-
polling,
And,
we
and
have
plus,
other
how many
things
more people
that
are
they rate him
having
the worst,
to go
because
back
what he's
to
done
work
is so
under the
bad.
Biden
And they
administration?
rate me-
I have
I'll
like
show you, I
15
will show you.
resumes
And
out
they
right
rate me
now.
one of the best, okay? And if I'm given another 4 years, I will be the best. I think I'll be the best. Nobody's ever created an economy like us. Nobody ever cut taxes like us. He's the only one I know. He wants to raise your taxes by 4 times. He wants to raise everybody's taxes by 4 times. He wants the Trump tax to expire. So everybody, including the 2 of you, are going to pay 4 to 5 times. Nobody ever heard of this before.
looks like
All
you
my life, I
belong
grow
to
up and I see
waxing song.
politicians talking about cutting taxes. When we cut taxes, as I said, we did more business. Apple and all these companies, they were bringing money back into our country. The worst president in history by far, and everybody knows it.
President Biden?
Look, the fact of the matter is that he's dead wrong about, he will increase the taxes on middle-class people. I said I never raised the
How?
taxes. on
How?
middle
He
income
wants to
less than
extend the tax
$20,000.
cuts.
I didn't. But his tariff is 10% tariffs. Everything coming in the country, you know what the economists say? That's going to cost the average American $2,500
But Biden
a
just
year more.
passed a bunch of
because
tariffs.
they're gonna
He
have to pay
kept
the
Trump's
difference
tariffs on
Yes.
China in
food,
place, and has
and all the things
passed
that are reported.
25%
Number two,
tariffs on China,
who's in a
on
situation
steel, and
where
now I
he talks
agree with
about
it.
how
I
he
agree
is
with it.
not
Same
raised-
thing also with electric
he's
vehicles.
somehow
I agree with it.
middle
But you
class.
can't say that
Middle class
that
have been
That's all
Biden
Trump.
that it's all Trump
Biden
when
will
Biden
spend
is also
$5 trillion
passing tariffs.
over the next 10 years, which is going to fundamentally bankrupt the country. You had the largest deficit of any president in American history, number one. Number two, you have not, in fact, made any contact, any progress with China. We are at the lowest trade deficit with China since 2010.
Thank you,
We were
President
the
Biden.
highest. You lost
Thank you, President Biden.
That's because
Let's
you're doing
let's
this
discuss an
green
epidemic
energy stuff,
impacting
which
millions of Americans that both of you have made
China
a top
has
priority in your
the
first
mining
term,
and
the opioid crisis.
production.
And for both
Oh
of
my
you,
God.
the number of overdose deaths in this country has gone up.
Because of
migrants are
Biden's-
bringing
Under
in
your term, it has
fentanyl.
gone
Exactly. He's saying you didn't do
Now,
anything with
President Trump,
China.
despite the efforts
Biden's
that both of you have
allowing
made,
people to come
more than
in.
100,000 Americans are dying from overdoses every year, primarily from fentanyl and other opioids. What will you do to help Americans right now in the throes of addiction?
Cut.
The largest deficit in the history of our country under this guy. We have the largest deficit with China. He gets paid by China. He's a Manchurian candidate. He gets money from China. So I think he's afraid to deal with them or something. But do you notice he never took out my tariffs because we bring in so much money with the tariffs that I imposed on China. He never took them away. He can't because it's too much money. It's
Which is what I just
tremendous.
said.
And we saved our steel industries, and there was more to come, but he hasn't done that. But he hasn't cut the tariffs because he can't, because it's too much money. But he's got the largest deficit in the history of our country, and he's got the worst situation with China. China's going to own us if you keep allowing them to do what they're doing to us as a country. They are killing us as a country, Joe, and you can't let that happen. You're destroying our country.
The green
So,
energy
President Trump, you have
gives them
67
jobs.
seconds left. The question was, what are you going to do to help Americans in the throes of addiction right now who are struggling to get the treatment they need?
Jake, we were doing very good addiction until the COVID came along. We had 2.5, almost 3 years of like nobody's ever had before, any country, in every way. And then we had to get tough. It was the drugs pouring across the border it started to increase. We got great equipment. We bought the certain dog that's the most incredible that you've ever seen, the way they can spot it. We did a lot, and we were getting very low numbers, very, very low numbers. Then he came along.
2019,
The numbers,
zero
have you
tourists watching.
seen now? It's not only the 18 million people that I believe is even low, because the gotaways, they don't even talk about gotaways, but the numbers of the amount of drugs and human trafficking in women coming across our border, thing I've ever seen, at numbers that nobody's ever seen under him. Because
We
the border's
have
so bad.
consulates and embassies
But the
across
number
the
of
world.
drugs coming
We have
across our
ports
border now
of entry.
is the largest
There is
we've ever
no
had by far.
need to sneak
President Trump,
across
thank
the
you,
border.
President Biden.
No.
Fentanyl and the byproducts of fentanyl went down for a while. And I wanted to make sure we use the machinery that can detect fentanyl, these big machines that roll over everything that comes across the border. And it costs a lot of money. That was part of this deal we put together, this bipartisan deal. More fentanyl machines, more be able to detect drugs.
Where are you using them?
more numbers of agents, more numbers of all the people at the border. And when we had that deal done, he called his Republican colleague and said, "Don't do it. It's going to hurt me politically." No, he never argued it's not a good bill. It's a really good bill. We need those
It
machines.
still
We need
allowed.
those
It
machines.
allowed you
We're coming down very
to
hard in
allow,
every
was it
country. It
5,000
is
Yeah,
people?
the first version of it,
fentanyl,
5,000.
and Mexico
Like,
is
if it's
working
against the
with
law,
us.
A
you
day,
can't.
5,000 people a day.
Technology to be able to put it together.
And at the
That's what we have
president's
to do. We
discretion, he
need
can
those
change it.
machines.
Right.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump, and again, the question
Sorry,
is
but the
about
cartel's
Americans in the throes
income
of
has
addiction right now,
increased
struggling to get the treatment they need.
Well,
26
'cause this does pertain
times
to
under
it.
Biden.
He ended remain in Mexico.
And that's
He ended
what they're
catch
willing
and
to
release.
report or
I made it
whatever.
catch and release in Mexico, not catch and release here. We had so many things that we had done, hard negotiations with Mexico, and I got it all for nothing. It's just like when you have a hostage. We always pay $6 billion for a hostage. Every time we say
It
there's a
just
hostage.
incentivizes
Now we have
taking
a
a
hostage, the Wall
hostage.
Street Journal reporter. I think a good guy, and he's over there because Putin is laughing at this guy, probably asking for billions of dollars for the reporter. I will have him out very quickly as soon as I take office, before I take office. As soon as I win the election, I will have
That's-
that report. a long
Evan?
time
No,
ago.
he's a Wall
But
Street
Putin's
Journal
probably
reporter.
asking for
sorry.
billions and billions because
Still
this guy
a
pays it
dent,
every time.
but that
We
would
had two
be
cases. We paid
big
$6 billion
olive
for
branch, I
5
think.
people. I got 58 people out, and I paid essentially nothing.
Thank you, President Trump. Dana?
Let's turn to concerns that voters have about each of you.
Yep.
President Biden, you would be 86 at the end of
But
your second term.
Paul Whelan
How
needs
do
to
you
come back
address
first. He needs to be
concerns
first in,
about
first
your
out.
ability
absolutely.
to handle the
Absolutely.
toughest
I
job
hadn't
in the
even heard that
world
name.
well
Yep.
into
Paul
your
Whelan needs to come back first.
Well, first of all, I spent half my career being criticized, being
You
the
can't get it
youngest
for nothing.
person
You send your
in
badass
politics. I was
Navy
the second
SEALs
youngest
or
person
somebody
ever
in to
elected
go
to the
get
United
it.
States Senate, and now I'm the oldest. This guy's 3 years younger and a lot less competent. I think that just look at the record. Look what I've done. Look how I've
Look at all
turned
the
around the horrible
facts
situation
he's
he
been
left
able
me.
to spit out
As I
this whole
said,
time
15
versus you,
million new
your
jobs, 800,000
generalities.
manufacturing jobs, more investment in America, over billions of dollars in private investment in enterprises that we are growing. By the way, we brought off a lot of people. The whole idea of computer chips. We used to have 40% of the market. We invented those chips, and we lost it because he was sending people to find the cheapest jobs overseas and then bring home a product. So I went to South Korea. I convinced Samsung to invest billions of dollars here in the United States. And guess what? Those fabs, they call them, to build these chips, those fabs pay over $100,000. You don't need a college degree for them. And there's billions, about $40 billion already being invested and being built right now in the United States, creating significant jobs for Americans from all over the world.
President Biden, you have 40 seconds left. Would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I would. The idea that somehow we are this failing country. I never heard a president talk like this before.
He's not saying a failure. He's saying you're doing a bad job.
Yes.
He's saying you're doing a bad job.
Yeah, you're
Country
causing it.
president
That's what he is
wouldn't
saying.
trade places with the United States of America for all our problems and all our opportunities. We're the most progressive country in the world in getting things done. We're the strongest country in the world. We're a country in the world who keeps our word and trusts us. All of our allies and those who he cuddles up to, from Kim Jong-un, he sends love letters to, and Putin, etc. They don't want to screw around with us.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Former
our
President
enemies
Trump,
should
to
not
follow
want
up,
to
you
screw
would be
around with
82
us.
at the end of your second term. What do you say to voters who have concerns about your
Biden would be
capabilities to
86.
serve?
Well, I took 2 tests, cognitive tests. I aced them, both of them, as you know. We made it public. He took none. I'd like to see him take one, just one, a real easy one.
Yeah,
Like go through the
Kerr
first
said
5
he would
questions.
be
couldn't
He
do it.
did.
competent to stand
He did
trial.
the
physical
test
every year.
of interviewing a DOJ
Knock on wood,
special
wherever we may have wood,
prosecutor,
that I'm in very good
and
health.
he
I just
failed.
won 2 club championships.
Right,
not
I mean,
even
he
some.
failed.
Kerr.
2 regular
Yeah.
club
It's the same.
championships. To do that, you have to be quite smart, and you have to be able to hit the ball a long way. And I do it. He doesn't do it. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. He challenged me to a golf match. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. I think I'm in very good shape. I feel that I'm as in good a shape as I was 25, 30 years ago. Actually, I'm probably a little bit lighter, but I'm in as good a shape as I was
many
years ago. I
videos
feel
do
very
we
good. I
have
feel the
of
same. But
Trump
I was willing to
stumbling
take a cognitive
0.
test. And you know what? If I didn't do well, I aced him. Dr. Ronnie Jackson, who's a great guy when he was White House doctor. And then I took another one, a similar one. And one of them said they'd never seen anybody ace him.
Thank you. President Biden?
You can see he is 6'5" and only 223 pounds, or 235 pounds. Well, you said 6'4", 200. Well, anyway, anyway, just take a look at what he says he is, and take a look at what he is. Look, I'd be happy to have a driving
That might be
contest
the
with him.
only
For
thing
him,
I
got
agree
my
with Biden
handicap,
on all of
which
that.
when I was vice president, down to a 6. But by the way, I told you before, I'm happy to play golf if you carry your own bag. Think you can do it?
Dude, you can't carry your own body across the
He's a
state.
6 handicap of all.
I was an 8 handicap.
Yeah.
8.
Oh my God. Okay.
I've seen you swing. I know you swing.
Let's
not act like children.
President Trump, we're going to
21
turn
Let's not act like.
There's 0 footage of
to
Biden
a specific concern
doing golf.
that voters have about you. Will you pledge tonight that once all legal challenges have been exhausted, you will accept the results of this election, regardless of who
Legal
wins?
challenges
And
exhausted.
you will say right now that political violence in any form is unacceptable.
Well, I shouldn't have to say that, but of course I believe that. It's totally unacceptable.
Agreed.
And if you would see my statements that I made on Twitter at the time,
January 6th,
and also my statement
0
that I made
people
in the
had
Rose Garden,
weapons.
you would say it's one
0.
of the strongest statements you've ever seen. In addition to the speech I made in front of, I believe, the largest crowd I've ever spoken to, and I will tell you, nobody ever talks about that. They talk about a relatively small number of people that went to the Capitol, and in many cases were ushered in by the police. And as Nancy Pelosi said, it was her responsibility, not mine. She said that loud and clear. But the answer is, if the election is fair, free, and I want that more than anybody. And I'll tell you something. I wish he was a great president, because I wouldn't be here right now. I'd be at one of my many places enjoying myself. I wouldn't be under indictment because I wouldn't have been his political opponent.
Yeah, exactly.
Because he indicted me.
He gives away his salary.
Because I was his opponent.
Yes, it goes
I
to
wish
charity.
He was a great president. I would
Biden collects
rather
his
have
salary
that.
and he
I
collects
wouldn't
all
be
the
here.
bribes
I don't
along the
mind being
way.
here. But the only reason I'm here is he's so bad as a president that I'm going to make America great again. We're going to make America great again. We're a failing nation right now.
What are
We're
you
a
looking at,
seriously
man?
failing nation. And we're a failing nation because policies are
He's
so
like,
bad.
this is way past my bedtime.
His
Yeah, I mean,
military
he
policy-
spends most of his time
insane.
staring at the
They're
floor.
insane. These are wars that will
Stare
never end
at
with him.
your opponent,
He
stare
will
at the
drive us into
moderators.
World War III, and we're closer to World War III than anybody can imagine. We are very, very close to World War III, and he's driving us there. And
Yep.
Kim Jong-un and President Xi of China, Kim Jong-un of North Korea, all of these, Putin,
Yeah, we got into
they don't
world wars
respect him.
because
They don't fear
they're
him.
enemies.
They have nothing going
Wanted
with
to
this
do
gentleman,
bad
and he's going
things,
to
and
drive us
there's
into
no one to
World
stop
War
them.
III.
And right now, we're not able to
You
stop
want a
them.
World War III, let him follow and win, and let Putin say, do what you want, NATO. Just do what you want. There's a thing called Article 5. An attack on one is attack on all, and required response. The idea, I can't think of a single major leader in the world who wouldn't trade places with the job I've done, what they've done. Because we're a powerful nation. We have wonderful peace because of the people. Not me, it's because of the American people. They're capable of anything, and they step up when they're needed. And right now...
Well, then why do you have such historic lows in military recruiting?
Yeah, we're talking about drafting women. Oh, wait a minute, all of a sudden we can define what a woman is? I mean, come on, under what presidency have we had such a silly
and other
debate
places along that border?
that?
Then you have a war.
President Trump, as I come back to you for a follow-up, the question was, will you accept the results of this election, regardless of who wins?
Just to finish what he said, if I might, Russia, they took a lot of land from Bush. They took a lot of land from Obama and
Yep,
Biden.
exactly.
They took no land, nothing
Under
from
you.
Trump, nothing. He knew not to do it. He's not going to play games with me. He knew that. I got along with him very well, but he knew not to play games. He took nothing from me. But now he's going to take the whole thing from this man right here.
Absolutely.
That's a war that should have never started. It would have never started ever with me. And he's going to take Ukraine. And, you know, you asked me a question before, would you do this?
And we will be missing a lot of money in the process.
Right now because Ukraine's not winning that war. They're running out of people. They're running out of soldiers. They've lost so many people. It's so sad. They've lost so many people, and they've lost those gorgeous cities with the golden domes that are 1,000 years old, all because of him and stupid decisions. Russia would have never attacked if I were
President
president.
Trump, the question was, will you accept the results of the election, regardless of who wins? Yes or no, please.
If it's a fair and legal and good election, absolutely. I would have much rather accepted these, but the fraud and everything else was ridiculous. And if you want, we'll have a news conference on it in a week, or we'll have another one of these in a week. But I will absolutely, there's nothing I'd rather do. It would be much easier for me to do that than I'm running again. I wasn't really going to run until I saw the horrible job he did. He's destroying our country. I would be very happy to be someplace else in a nice
Biden, why are you
location
looking down,
someplace.
man?
And
Are you
again,
seeing dead people?
No indictments, no political opponent stuff, because it's the only way he thinks he can win. But unfortunately, it's driven up my numbers and driven them up to a very high level because the people understand it.
Well, let's see what your numbers are when this election is over.
Let's see.
Let's see. You're a whiner. When you lost the first time, You
Oh,
continue to
geez, and what
appeal
are
to
you
the
going to
appeal to courts
say
all across
if
the
and when
country.
you lose?
Not
What did
one
Hillary
single
Clinton
court in America said any of your claims had any merit, state or local, none. But you continue to provoke, lie about somehow there's all this misrepresentation, all this stealing. There's no evidence of that at all. And I tell you what, I doubt
That's not
whether
true.
you'll accept
There
it
have
because
been
you're such
people
a
that have
liar.
been convicted
The idea
of
if you lose
tampering with
again, you
ballots.
accept it.
Now, I don't
You
know
can't
if it's
still
enough
lost.
to overturn the
Something's
election,
happening when you lost.
but to say zero,
We'll
that's
be
not
right
true.
back
Absolutely.
with
I mean,
more
people
from the
in
CNN presidential
Connecticut have
debate,
been
live from
caught
Georgia.
stuffing ballots.
Okay, so we have switched over back to us because again we don't want to show any commercials.
Yep.
But I tell you, Kimberly, we talked about the stuff we're drinking, but you had a number of awesome things you were going to talk about to our audience.
So
I'm going to go grab a power cord real quick, and Kimberly's going to take over.
So, a very sour issue for us conservatives to talk about is January 6th. Like, we don't like to talk about. Some of us don't like to talk about abortion. We don't like to talk about January 6th. But as more and more things slowly get revealed, painfully slowly, I'm like, come on, it's been 4 years. But Tucker Carlson left Fox, a year ago? And then he started his own brand or venue or whatever. And one of the first episodes that he did was an interview with former Capitol Police Chief. And he flat out says, like, look, Nancy Pelosi did not allow the National Guard to come in.
Right.
And so I found it a very riveting episode. So go look it up. It's on YouTube. Tucker Carlson and the former police chief in August of last year. So there's that. And then there was a very brief mention of the 16 Nobel Prize-winning economists saying, "Oh, Trump's going to make the inflation worse." And so what they're focusing on is Trump and his tax cuts. Even Thomas Sowell says when people feel like they're not getting robbed, like the Boston Tea Party, it was like 2%, and there was no such thing as income tax either. They felt like they were getting robbed, and so they did the Boston Tea Party, and here we are, as much as 40% of our income tax, yet we're not saying anything. Like, when people feel like they're getting robbed, they're not going to spend more money than they have to. When they don't feel like they're getting robbed, they're like, okay, I'll spend a little more money. Here's this impulse item at
Right.
the end of the end cap at the grocery store. I might buy more. I feel like I'm getting effed.
Right.
I cry going to the grocery store.
I mean, we're not wealthy. We're not
4
wealthy
bags
people.
of groceries
Yeah.
for $70. I'm not getting organic. I'm not getting seafood. I'm getting Cheerios. I'm one more cent away from getting generic, but our kid's a snob.
Right.
But I'm buying, the generic, store brand milk. All these things. And I'm crying at the grocery store.
Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, when we talk about, I'll be honest, I really would love Trump to steal Ronald Reagan's famous quote of, "Ask yourself, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago?" And here we go back again.
2 minutes.
We've made significant progress from the debacle that was left by President Trump in his last term. We find ourselves in a situation where, number one, we have to make sure that we have a fair tax system. I ask anyone out there in the audience, or anyone out watching this debate, do you think the tax system is fair? The fact is that I said Nobody even making
Groceries are a greater
$400,000 had a
concern.
single penny increase in their taxes, and will not. And if I'm reelected, that'll be the case again. But this guy
Trump's
has
tax cuts
increased
are
your taxes
expiring,
because of the
so
deficit.
you
Number
will
one,
get.
He's increased inflation because of the debacle he left after the way he handled the pandemic. And he finds himself in a position where he now wants to tax you more by putting a 10% tariff on everything that comes into the United States.
But
of
he
America.
wants to tax
To grow
cuts.
U.S.
For
businesses.
example, he wants to get away with, get rid of the ability of Medicare to, for
Yeah.
us to be able to negotiate drug prices with the big pharma companies. Well, guess what? We got it down to $35.
Anybody else
instead
notice
of
how much
$400,
longer it takes
no
your
more than
pharmacy to fill
$2,000
out your drugs?
For every senior, no matter how much prescription they need. You know what that did? That reduced the federal debt.
Keep
by
talking,
$160
keep talking,
billion
because you don't have a
because the
teleprompter
government
and people
got
can
paid
see you.
exorbitant prices. I'm going to make that available to every senior all along, or it's happening now, and everybody in America. He wants to get rid of that. I'm going to make sure that we have child care. We're going to significantly increase the credits that people have for child care. I'm going to make sure we do something about what we're doing on lead pipes and all the things that are causing health
What have
problems
you done for
for
that?
people across the country. We're going to continue to fight to bring down inflation and give people a break.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump, you now have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Like so many politicians, this man is just a complainer. He said, we want to do this, we want to do that, we want to get rid of this tax, that tax. But he doesn't do anything. All he does is make our country unsafe by allowing millions and millions
Says
of
he
people to
doesn't have the
pour in.
power to do
Our
so.
military doesn't respect
But
him. We look like
but now
fools
that
in
it's becoming a
Afghanistan.
huge problem, it's
We
close
didn't
to the
stop
election, he
Israel.
now
It
can
was such
do
a horrible
executive
thing that
orders.
would have
It's
never
amazing.
happened. It
Smoke
should
and
never
mirrors.
happened. Iran
So
was
what will
broke.
happen, I can
Anybody
promise
that
you,
did
what will
business
happen
with
as
Iran,
soon as he
including
wins
China,
re-election,
they
if he
couldn't do
does,
business with the
he'll
United States.
he'll
They
go back.
passed. Iran was broke. They had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah, for terror, no money whatsoever.
Hezbollah
Again,
blocking
Ukraine
the
living in
prices.
hell. We have Indians and we have everybody else rioting all over the place. You talk about Charlottesville. This is 100 times Charlottesville, 1,000 times. The whole country is exploding because of you, because they don't respect you, and they have to respect their president, and they don't respect you throughout the world. What we did was incredible. We rebuilt the military. We got the largest tax cut in history, the largest regulation cut in history. The reason he's got jobs is because I cut the regulations that gave jobs, but he's putting a lot of those regulations back on. All of the things that we've done, nobody's never seen anything like. Even from a medical standpoint, right to try, where we can try space-age materials instead of going to Asia or going to Europe and trying to get when you're terminally ill. Now you can go and you can get something. You sign a document. They've been trying to get it for 42 years. But you know what we did for the military was incredible. Get themselves fixed up and readied up and take care of themselves. And they're living. And that's why I had the approval rating and the history of
I
the
could
VA.
have 13
So all of these things, we're in a
episodes
failing
just
nation,
on
but it's not
TRICARE
going to be failing anymore.
and
We're going to make it
coverage
great
and
again.
doctor visits.
Thank you, former President Trump, President Biden. Stay with us because we have full
Should have said
analysis
stay
of
with
this
us.
debate. Anderson Cooper and Aaron Burnett starts now on CNN.
That's crazy. All right, so we're back on.
Fun, stay with us.
Yeah, I mean,
Don't walk towards the light.
Yeah, Biden, stay with us. Don't walk over towards the light and go off the stage.
We know you want to lay down and rest. That's why you're staying on the ground.
I mean, so here's the thing. Please, first of all, we would love to ask if you're still watching. Please leave us a like. It really helps the channel out. You'll just find that like button. It's a thumbs up sign. Please go ahead and hit that if you would. It really helps us out. But if you were watching this, and I had a great time watching this because Biden reaffirmed my opinion of him. His mouth was open the whole time. He was staring at the ground the whole time, and he just flubbed his answers. Now, let me be clear. President Biden does have a stutter. and he lifelong stutter, and he has worked very hard to get over it. So he does have a stutter. So I'll throw him a bone on that. And it's
But
been
his stutter compared to 4 years ago.
yeah. I mean, it's getting worse. And the thing is his stutter is interfering with his ability to answer the questions, not because he's stuttering, but because he doesn't have an answer. He doesn't have an answer.
Well, also, he's speaking in more generalities, whereas
Right.
Trump was pretty on point,
Right.
like able to recite facts, able to recite numbers, able to counter him, to counter Biden, and Biden wasn't as easily able to transition.
Sure. Right.
And our enemies are watching this. I mean, I just feel like we're arguing against a party that never had those schoolyard brawls, like, oh, sticks and stones may break our bones. Like, no, you utter one little negative word against them.
Right. No, I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. I mean,
We need to get back to that toughness.
So this is a conservative channel. This is a right-leaning channel.
In case you haven't noticed,
If you,
yeah.
if you haven't
We'll be
noticed,
honest.
if you looked at us, but here is the honesty. I mean, both of us. I had a top secret special compartmentalized information security clearance. Kimberly had a top secret clearance. So I know how to compartmentalize and truncate various things. I mean, I know how to act, with a piece of information over here and not share it to a group over here. So let me compartmentalize the fact that that we are a conservative channel. But Kimberly, I'm going to ask you the same thing. I'm going to ask myself, who do you think won the debate? In my opinion, I think Trump won the debate because, one, he was very calm, cool, and collected.
Yes.
Two,
And that's what he needs. If he can stay calm, cool, and collected, I think a little towards the end he started to veer. But I mean, come on, from the human aspect, the human nature aspect, you blame him? No.
Right.
But considering like previous debates with him, in 2020,
interrupting and doing all those
2016,
things.
he did an excellent job. And I will also give credit to the moderators because I was really expecting like just cut off his mic. I don't think they did it once.
No, in fact, I agree with you. In fact, there were a couple of times where they did cut off mics because obviously you could hear people talking, but there were some periods of time where they let the mic go,
Yes,
even though they said, thank you,
did
Mr.
notice
Trump,
that.
and then like Trump went a little bit further and they didn't cut his mic. But there were times on both sides, they were equal, where they cut a mic because you could see them still talking, but there was no sound. But so number one was he was calm, cool, and collected. Number two, he was prepared. He was prepared with
and he didn't have
facts.
to resort to a week in Camp David by himself. Like he was still able to go out and do his stuff.
Right. I mean, he was absolutely prepared with the facts. He was prepared for the questions.
And not just blanket generalities, which was most of Biden's talk.
Exactly. In fact, he was able to not override's not the right word, but he was able to counteract the moderator who talked about a Supreme Court case and said information that wasn't correct. And then Trump was able to say, you're wrong because the Supreme Court did say X. And so it made Dana Bash look uninformed. And so Trump was able to pull that off. And then the third one, he physically fit. He looked
He was able to
well.
He was able to speak quickly, clearly, and address the point for the most part. I would say the only generality he hit was worst president, which, I mean, come on, honestly, yes. And I hate the subject of abortion. He did a very good, okay, I really hear the conservative talking points against abortion. I hear you, but politically speaking, you have to win to get into office, to do the greatest good. Maybe not the best good or the 100% solution, whatever it is you want, but the best that is attainable. He did a good job with that, I feel like.
I agree. Now, so those are the reasons why I think Trump won. Now, let me talk about Biden. Why I think Trump won versus negative on Biden. Biden didn't look well. He did not look well. He had his mouth open. Even his voice was gravelly. I almost want to say, because apparently he's been at Camp David prepping, and he's had 16 advisors, some playing Trump, some playing opposition.
And
Some
Trump
playing.
didn't do any of that.
He didn't.
I mean, Putin's not going to give you that chance to do that a week before you speak to it.
Exactly. So who's been running the country while for the past 2 weeks?
Dr. Jill Biden.
Yeah, Dr. Jill Biden. The past 2 weeks while
That's a whole nother episode.
Biden has been at Camp David, but still he didn't look well. He didn't look well. So if he was trying to project strength and why I should be the next continuation of my presidency, he didn't look well. He looked like he was the very first, I'm going to say 15 minutes. He kept putting his hand to his mouth like he wanted to cough. He should have just coughed and gotten out of the way.
Right.
But his voice sounded so gravelly and congested, so he must be sick. But he kept trying to cough, and then he kept his mouth open during the whole time, like an old person that keeps their mouth open at all times. And this is the biggest problem that I had. He stared. Go back and look at re-look at this video, or whatever streaming that you saw. But he stared at the ground.
Like, I want to go sleep there.
Well, for
like
at least
me
90%.
on mile 9 of my first marathon, I'm like, oh, that looks comfortable. I'm so
But
tired.
at least 80 to 90% of the debate, he stared at the ground. Yeah. In 2020, in the debates with Trump, he stared at the camera. He talked to the camera all the time. Right. And this time, that was missing. So 1, he looked ill. 2, had his mouth open and he was staring at the ground. And 3, he was not prepared. For as much time as he spent preparing with 16 aides, he was fundamentally flawed in most of his answers. Now, what do you think? I mean, what do you think?
Well, what stuck out for me was, now, I kind of had low expectations, so he did better than I expected. But, I mean, again, like I said earlier, there's expectation management.
Right.
But also, when someone speaks in like 90% generalities, it's kind of like, okay, I need some facts. Okay, where did you get that from? Just stop doing talking points.
Well, here's the big thing. One of the big things of this quotation of President Trump supposedly staring at the graves of World War I service members and saying these guys are suckers and losers. All right. Here's the big. The general said that. This general said that. That general.
Do we have footage of Trump actually
saying? Who said it? Why wouldn't you say it's General X said this? And that's
well, I'll give credit to Trump for saying that, because I think like 2016, definitely 2020 Trump probably, but 2024 Trump, he's not giving out the name.
Right. I mean, this would be an opportune time. General
he's
X,
not ruining
who I don't
career.
know who the general is, but General X is a liar. And I didn't say that because there's 19 other people that have said that I didn't say that. And I would say, who would say that in front of a general, that these guys are
they
losers and suckers?
They would have caught it on camera, too. I mean, you're the president of the United States. They would have caught that on camera.
Right.
Show me the footage. I haven't seen the footage.
I personally think the general's fired, and then the general said it in order to do it. But we don't know who is it.
Who I got fired,
Who is this person?
Smear. Yes.
Well, so who do you think? I mean, you were given but who do you think?
Personally, I think Trump wanted. Now,
Okay.
you know, we've had debates over like if we could choose anybody to be
Sure.
president. Trump wanted it, but amongst the candidates, like we will be voting for Trump for the third time.
Right.
Right. Sorry, I had overall criticism. So, what are groups of people that you think will have a hard time voting for Trump before or after this debate? And how would you suggest Trump, or maybe not Trump, but how would you argue against those? Like, so
Right.
some African Americans, they're shifting more in Trump's direction.
Sure.
And then you also have a problem with women. What are some ways or Trump can counter that, or some talking points Trump supporters could make arguments for?
Yeah. So I think one of the most important things that a president does is select their vice president, and on the by and by, a president candidate selects a vice president candidate that fills a capability gap, right? On the by and by. So for instance, President Trump selected Mike Pence to fill a capability gap with white evangelicals, right? So that's why he did it. So in my opinion, to answer your question, in my opinion, I think Trump has a gap in suburban women. And so therefore, I think his vice president pick, again, I'm not part of the camp, but I think his vice president pick would need to be a female, and I'm a strong proponent of Tulsi Gabbard, or Tulsi Gabbard, or I would choose Sarah Huckabee, who's the governor of Arkansas. And I think that capability gap would be filled by doing that. And again, he could choose anybody. Obviously, he's going to choose anybody he wants. But if that's
and it's Trump. I mean,
Sure.
he had a reality TV show, and so he could pull a
Right.
1-2 pretty quickly. Like, I didn't see that person coming. And so that's why I personally do not try to predict his VP. Also, I think a lot of people don't really pay attention to who the VP is. Like, no, whoever the president elected or candidate is going to be is the forefront and center.
right.
So I think women, even more so than African Americans, are going to be a harder demographic to move.
I agree.
Probably going to get canceled over this. But women, if you look down deep in your hearts and you don't say it out loud, we're more emotional than men. Okay? It is. All right? Now, men can be emotional. It just depends on what the thing is.
Sure.
But we've seen Trump for 8 years. And so many talking points are slow, name calling has been done against him. And that's just kind of hardwired into our brain at some point. So I think that's a harder sell than the African Americans, because things that affect them is going to be more money related.
Right.
Okay. But women.
So instead of appealing towards, because there are women that are angry at him about Roe v. Wade. And again, there's a misconception. A lot of times people say the Supreme Court did away with abortions or legalized abortion. All they did is they brought it down to the states and let state by state decide. That's all that happened. But still, there are a lot of women that are mad at him. But I think I agree with you on money with women, because it's the majority of the moms are doing the shopping and seeing what's going on with these high prices.
I mean, so many of my drinks have doubled in price. My mom sent a text out about a week ago. So she likes to eat Raisin Bran, okay? And it went from like 38 ounces to 29 ounces. It was like 8.5 ounces of cereal. That's a pretty significant amount of cereal. That's a 2, 3, I don't know, however many meals. I mean, it went from the same price decreasing 8.5 ounces
The
and
shrink,
still called family size.
right, shrinkflation.
And I'm like, you're losing 3 meals, 2-3 meals for the same price, really? That affects everyone. But women, I think you need to think, what issues, put name calling aside, whatever. Okay, first of all, Eugene Carroll or whatever her name is.
Right.
I mean, she went on national TV bragging about how she's going to spend the money. If you're a victim of rape or any sort of sexual misconduct with a man, are you going to go brag about how you're going to spend the money? No, I don't care how much time has passed. You're not going to brag. It's still not going to heal that wound. So she lost a lot of credibility in that. And all 3 of the major candidates have sexual abuse allegations. I mean, Tara Reid with Joe Biden. He has 6 other women claiming that Joe Biden, in all the 50 years he was a senator, had inappropriate touching. And just Google, do your own research. All the images of Joe Biden, like sniffing kids' hair, like hocus pocus style, like it's going to
Crazy.
restore his youth or something. And then pulling little girls and women, young women.
And touching them on
I
the
mean,
waist.
I'm
and-
sorry,
and-
I don't care if you're the president or not. If I'm the mom, we're the dads, but I'm the mom. They're going to send me to Siberia.
Right.
They're going to send me to Siberia if you touch my daughter that way. I'm like, no. But the increase in crime, I don't care what the statistics say. If police agencies don't report it, then it's not going to count. Like, okay, I'm on a diet plan. I'm going to count all my calories, but I'm not going to count this cake I eat every night. But why am I gaining weight? Like, that's the same thing with these crime statistics. The agencies are not reporting the crime, so of course crime looks good. On a personal note, I have been running in the park for 8 years.
In Memorial Park, Houston, Texas.
At an early hour. And recently I have felt like a man has stalked me. I go across an intersection, Hispanic, not black, not white, in between melanin content, standing there propped up against a car. A mile later, and of course, you run around, I don't care what hour it is, you're going to see cars driving at night. Similar looking male at a different intersection. Guess further away, but you just know, staring at me. So we had to spend money for me to get a gym membership. You want to preach green agenda, you want to vote for illegals to come across the border, you want the increase in crime because you feel sorry for the criminals and they had a bad background, blah, 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 blah. I was going the most green route, running outside, no electricity required. I didn't even drive to the park, and now I'm having to drive to a gym membership. Gas and electricity. And
it's
using
worth it. It's worth it because we're obviously rebudgeting our household, but it's worth it because safety is paramount.
Yes. So
But
women.
but Biden has
crime
made our country less
affects
safe.
Us more. Crime affects us women more because we're physically more vulnerable, and typically, I don't care how boss babe you are. I don't care if your husband stays at home with the kids. We are going to do more for the kids. It's going to affect us more. We're more vulnerable. And so why do you think, like, when illegals come over and they kill Laken Riley, they rape the 13-year-old girl in Queens, they killed the mom of 5 in Morin in Maryland. It affects us more. The women getting punched in the head in New York. Women. So if you if you level the playing field for all the 3 major candidates, and Megyn Kelly did an interview with Maureen Callahan. She wrote a book about the Kennedys.
Right.
Robert Kennedy Jr. is not innocent.
Right.
His late wife wrote. He had a sex diary about all of his conquests and ranking them, and then drove his wife to basically insanity, because if your husband's cheating on you left and right, you're either going to be smashing plates or you're going to be so depressed. And then he calls her crazy. He's not innocent either. So all three candidates have issues. So just level the playing field amongst douchebags. Forget about that. What's going to affect your day-to-day life?
What's policy? What's the policy going to be?
Yes. What's going to affect your day-to-day life? Trump and Carol, not going to affect your day-to-day life. Joe Biden and Tara Reid, not going to affect your day-to-day life. Robert Kennedy Jr., not going to affect your day-to-day life. Illegal immigrants committing crimes against women is going to affect your day-to-day life. All these DAs who do not persecute criminals is going to affect your day-to-day life.
No, Kimberly, I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. So, the important part about this debate is to watch it and to be able to make your own decisions on what is the proper candidate for you. One that's going to, represent your morals, one that's going to represent the policies you believe in, one that's going to bring the country greater prosperity. And in this instance, I really feel that Donald Trump won this debate. I really thought that there's post coverage that's going on right now. We can see it in the background. Obviously, we utilized the streaming service on Fox News, but we did our best to delete and mute any commercials or commentary from Fox News proper. We just try to utilize just the simulcast that was going on to all the stations. But still, if you put all that aside, I really feel that Donald Trump won the debate, and I think Joe Biden looked horrible. I think as we look into the future, will the media be saying, "Oh, it's clear Joe Biden won"?
I'm sure they'll figure a way to spin it.
I'm sure they'll figure a way to spin it. The low light in the debate was going back and forth on golf handicaps and who could carry the golf bags. Please, that was silly.
If Putin cares about anything, it's riding horseback.
Yeah, exactly. So that was a little silly. But we just want to thank each and every one of you that attended our live cast, live stream of this event. Again, we're doing this in our living room because we have small children, so we don't want to commit a crime by going to our studio. So I drug all of the camera. Well, we're doing this on an iPhone, but I drug all of the lighting equipment and stuff like that. So we've got giant lights here, and then the accent lighting in the background and stuff like that. So I drug all that over from our studio. But still, thank you so much for staying with us, even at the beginning with our technical malfunctions with the gimbal, the weight of the receivers for our microphones was I had the camera off balance, and so it kept flipping down. So if you were bearing with us when that was happening,
it's just us. We don't have a producer or anything like that.
We're a regular mom and dad that's doing this stuff. So this is not a huge thing. This is the best we could do inside our living room with having our camera and flipping back and forth on a gimbal. But we couldn't be more happy to have the amount of people. We had at 32 people. 32 people.
And we're 6 months in. Come on, keep that in mind.
Yeah, exactly. So 32 people watched our podcast and our live stream. And so I couldn't be more happy that 32 people came in. And the average view, so the average person viewed 14 minutes and 28 seconds. So there were a lot of people that stayed on for a lot of time listening to us, and we couldn't be more grateful for each and every single one of you for attending this. We know that you had a lot of choices that you could have done, and we're glad that you chose Azimuth Podcast. So with that, we're going to go ahead and sign off.
Yes.
And everybody, hopefully you enjoyed the drinking game. Hopefully you filled up some of your bingo card. I was kind of stamping some of the stuff that we had, and I was so pleased that a lot of it got filled up. So again, please go ahead and like this video if you haven't liked it already. But again, thank you so much for tuning into Azimuth Podcast, and have a great day.